Chapter 670. He thought it was the delayed rejection of the true eye, but he didn't expect to see something like this. It turned out that the reason why he had been acting strangely was because of the third eye. Xiao Xian didn't understand why this happened. A true eye could only grow one eye. The shaman and the others had a third eye because both of their eyes were normal. But now, why did Caesar have a third eye after his right eye? When he put it in, he only put it in his right eye. What was the difference between this third eye and the other two? Unfortunately, Caesar couldn't speak, so he couldn't tell Xiao Xian what he was feeling in detail. Xiao Xian temporarily gave up on the idea of bringing him back. Caesar wasn't angry right now. His emotions were stable and he didn't hit the ground again. He was confused. Xiao Xian was confused too. After Xiao Xian blew the whistle, he probably understood the order. Xiao Xian saw that Caesar was walking towards them, but he stopped because his third eye opened. After understanding the reason for Caesar's strange behavior, Xiao Xian calmed down a little. This meant that it wasn't a delayed rejection, and the other two eyes weren't damaged either. While Xiao Xian was thinking, Caesar suddenly tilted his head. All three of his eyes were looking at the bushes on the side, and he let out a low growl. There was a nocturnal beast hiding there. It thought it was well hidden and was planning to ambush Caesar, but it didn't expect Caesar to notice it first. His growl was a message to the nocturnal beast hiding behind the bushes. "I found you, get out of here." Actually, when he looked into Caesar's newly opened third eye, even though he could not see the eyes clearly due to the green light, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was similar to the Jing shamans and Miu's gazes when he was in the Jing tribe, but they were not exactly the same. Perhaps it was because the fuse together was different, so the emotions they contained were different. That was why the feeling was different. Maybe it was because the fuse together was different. Caesar's third eye made anyone who saw it feel like they would be found no matter if they were hiding in the bushes or behind a tree. Maybe this was why the nocturnal beasts that came over after smelling the scent of blood were hesitant and didn't move. They liked to ambush their prey. If they were discovered, it wouldn't be called ambushing. They preferred to kill in one strike, so they wouldn't move unless they were confident. That was why after Caesar's growl, the nocturnal beasts didn't leave immediately, but they didn't attack for the time being. They would continue to wait for an opportunity. The nocturnal beasts around them wouldn't move for the time being. Xiao Xian looked at Caesar, who was standing there. He blew the whistle for the third time, the same sound as before. Caesar finally walked towards Xiao Xian after hearing the whistle, but his footsteps were hesitant. He wasn't as straightforward as before. Xiao Xian could even feel Caesar's puzzled gaze. What was it puzzled about? Could it be that he saw something? Xiao Xian suddenly remembered what the shaman had said. He had said that there was a person behind him, and Caesar's third eye was similar to the shaman's. They were both born from the true eye. Did that mean that Caesar had also seen the person behind him? Was that why it had hesitated when it heard the command? However, even if Caesar had seen something it couldn't before, it still followed Xiao Xian's command and walked over. It even let out a confused whimper. As soon as it heard the whimper, Xiao Xian was sure that Caesar had regained consciousness. Its body was injured, so it wasn't suitable for it to stay where it was. It needed to find a place to treat its injuries. "Let's go." Xiao Xian turned around and walked back the way they came. At first, Xiao Xian's speed wasn't fast, but when he heard the movement on the ground behind him, Xiao Xian sped up and whistled for Cha-Cha in the sky to follow. It was night time and Caesar was injured. After running so far, it must be tired. Not only it, Cha-Cha also needed to rest. Besides, it wasn't suitable for Cha-Cha to fly at night, so Xiao Xian found a place to rest and treated Caesar's wounds. He didn't bring a medicine bag, so he didn't have much medicine on him. He could only make do with what he had. Fortunately, although Caesar's injuries looked frightening, they weren't serious. Some of the shallow wounds had already scabbed over. The more serious injuries were concentrated on its back and head. The injuries on its back were left behind when it was fighting with other vicious beasts, and the injuries on its head were left behind by itself. When they were resting, Xiao Xian had a chance to take a good look at Caesar's third eye. Caesar didn't seem to be very good at controlling the third eye. After it opened, it took a long time before it stiffly closed. It was like a rusty machine, so its reactions weren't very agile. It also wasn't synchronized with the other two eyes. The skin around the third eye had hardened a lot. Xiao Xian only noticed this when he was applying medicine on Caesar's wounds. This reminded him of the true eye he caught. When he cut open the true eye, there was also a layer of hardened flesh around the true eye. He didn't know if it was because of that, but if he had the chance in the future, he should go to the Jing tribe and ask. Xiao Xian thought to himself. When Cha-Cha saw Caesar, he was even more shocked than when he found out Caesar was blind in one eye. In a moment of carelessness, this guy went from having only one eye to having three. Fearsome beasts had stronger recovery abilities than normal beasts. After one night, the wounds on Caesar's body had already scabbed over, and the smell of blood was not as strong as before. When Caesar woke up the next day, he was in good spirits. He was also clear-headed, but he still wasn't used to his third eye. Occasionally, he would raise his paw to rub it. Before this, Xiao Xian always thought that he was rubbing his paw because there was something wrong with his eyes. Now, he understood that Cha-Cha actually wanted to rub the spot where his third eye grew out. It was mainly where he hit trees, the ground, and the mountains. Now that his third eye had grown out perfectly, the discomfort had subsided a lot, so he no longer banged his head around crazily. Perhaps after some time, he would get used to his third eye. Because of the matter with his third eye, Caesar had used up a lot of his energy. After he recovered, he went to hunt for food. Caesar hunted faster than usual, but sometimes he would look at Xiao Xian in confusion. To be exact, he was looking behind Xiao Xian. "There's someone behind me, right?" Xiao Xian said as he nibbled on a wild fruit. Caesar only whimpered twice. He looked behind Xiao Xian with fear, but because he was close to Xiao Xian, he wasn't as vigilant. "Don't worry about him. I'll find out who's behind this sooner or later." Xiao Xian looked up into the sky. Cha-Cha had also finished hunting, so he erased all traces. "Let's go back." At the edge of the tribe, there were people standing guard. It was Lang Jie and the others. They were probably worried about Xiao Xian, so they stood guard there. Everyone was carrying bags, ready to enter the forest if anything happened. When they saw the eagle in the sky, Lang Jie and the others were delighted. However, Xiao Xian didn't sit on the eagle's back. Instead, he ran on the ground with Caesar. Caesar was injured, and because his third eye hadn't fully recovered, Xiao Xian had to keep an eye on him. "The great elder is back." Someone looked ahead and said. "Caesar is back too. It's good that they're all back safely." Lang Jie happily ran forward for a while. He was the one who brought Caesar back to the tribe, so in the Yanjiao tribe, Lang Jie and Caesar had a good relationship. During this time, he was also worried about Caesar's condition and went to visit him several times. Now that he saw Caesar running back with Xiao Xian, he was happy to welcome them. However, when he looked at Caesar, he felt that something was wrong. As Caesar ran closer, the smile on Lang Ga's face stiffened. His eyes widened, and he rubbed his eyes before continuing to stare. The others weren't any better than Lang Ga. They had heard that Caesar's condition was caused by his new right eye. Some people even discussed in private whether the way to recover Caesar was to remove his new eye. Therefore, when Caesar returned, they stared at Caesar's right eye. At first glance, the right eye was fine. When they looked again, the left eye was fine too. Both eyes were fine, but there was a strange feeling. The hairs on the back of their necks trembled. When they looked closer, F***CK. What the hell? Because he couldn't control his new eye, Caesar's third eye was still wide open when he came back. It was even vertical. Originally, A dire beast's eyes looked more ferocious than a human's. Now, this combination looked even more terrifying. Moreover, when that eye looked over, it gave people a different feeling than an ordinary eye. Therefore, the shock that Caesar's third eye brought to them could not be described as small. Not to mention Lang Jie and the others, after Xiao Xian brought Caesar back, everyone who saw Caesar was dumbfounded. Some time ago, when Caesar's right eye had just grown out, many people in the tribe had come to watch out of curiosity. Now there were even more onlookers. After all, they had seen many wolves with two eyes. Even if the right eye had grown out, it would at least look like a normal wolf. However, they had never seen a wolf with three eyes. I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. I thought only humans had three eyes. I didn't expect wolves to have it too. Dooley wanted to take a closer look, but Caesar didn't allow anyone to touch his third eye. A few days after his third eye grew out, Caesar didn't show any signs of irritation. Even his movements of rubbing his eyes with his claws became less and less. At first, his third eye was just wide open and looked dull, but it gradually became more lively. Caesar could even control the blinking of his eyes. However, Caesar usually didn't open his third eye in the tribe because he noticed that everyone didn't seem to like his third eye. Every time they met his third eye's gaze, they would unconsciously feel nervous. Therefore, gradually, as he became more familiar with controlling his third eye, Caesar kept it closed. He would only open his third eye when he went out to look for food or when he went out to patrol with Xiao Xian. When he didn't open his third eye, there was no trace of an eye on his forehead. It was impossible to tell that there was an eye there. If Miao was here, he would definitely tell Xiao Xian that the situation of Caesar's third eye was very similar to his. Chapter 671. After Caesar's condition stabilized, Xiao Xian would go to the Flaming River trading point every day to see if there was any new news. Ever since the last Flaming River Grand Banquet, all the tribes had been sharing information with each other. After hearing about the movements in the desert and the sea, the patrols around Yanjiao increased. People would come to the Flaming River trading point every day. Some of them were young tribesmen who went on a long journey to gain experience. They came to satisfy their curiosity after hearing about the Flaming River trading point, while others came to trade. They were very familiar with the business of buying and reselling. Xiao Xian heard that there were traveling teams who bought beast hides here and sold them at double the price in other trading points in the central region. When the moon was bright, the drumming tribe's production of water moonstones was very high. The water moonstones needed moonlight, and the bigger the moon, the higher the efficiency and the better the quality of the water moonstones. Therefore, before the moon was full, everyone in the drumming tribe began to work overtime. They hadn't stopped until now. Other than the people on duty, the rest of the people worked day and night in reverse. Most of the water moonstones they obtained were used to repay their debts and given to Yanjiao. That was why even if someone tried to steal them, they wouldn't be able to get much. After the debt was paid off, the drumming tribe's experience in making water moonstones increased. They also tasted the benefits of merging their fire seed. At least they didn't have to worry about people attacking them on the night of the full moon. They didn't have to worry about the night of the full moon, nor did they have to guard the water moon passage. They had less to worry about, so naturally, they could spend more effort on defense. The Rain tribe's life was now on the right track. A portion of the Rain tribesmen entered the Flaming River trading point and rented a house. They guarded a shop and displayed the cloth and pottery they made in the tribe. They only had to wait here for people to come and trade, so they didn't have to worry about being robbed. On the other hand, the land in the tribe had already been reclaimed. It wasn't too far from the river, so they didn't have to worry about water. The Flaming River was big enough. Even if all the rivers in the central region dried up, the Flaming River here wouldn't. They didn't have to worry about food or clothing, so their quality of life was improving. Now, more and more tribesmen were entering and exiting the Flaming River trading point. They didn't need to visit other tribes because the Flaming River Trading Point provided them with a central trading point. The Flaming River Trading Point was the largest trading point in the Flaming River region. It was also the largest trading point other than the ones in the Central region and the grassland. Of course, every team that came here would not be impressed by the animal hides and meat, but the buildings here. Even though the Flaming River Trading Point had more rules than other trading points, the expedition teams that came here once would always look forward to a second visit. Seeing the Flaming River Trading Point bustling with activity day by day, Zheng Luo felt a sense of honor and pride. In the past, Zheng Luo wanted to call this place Flaming River City because that was how the slave masters named their cities on the other side of the sea. However, he didn't want to copy everything from the slave masters, so he was conflicted about this. You could say that he was pretentious, but he just didn't want to do everything according to the slave owners. Even if it was the same thing, he wanted to name it differently. This was the tribal people's awkward feelings towards the slave owners. Let's call it the city, Xiao Xian said. You can call it the Flaming River City. The city refers to the place where all the trading points are concentrated. In the future, this place will definitely expand. It won't stop here. Alright. Then from now on, this place will be called the Flaming River City. I'll tell everyone about it during the meeting. Zheng Luo was very satisfied with this name. Thus, as the Flaming River Trading Point was named, the abbreviation of the Flaming River Trading Point, Flaming River City, gradually spread among the expedition teams. Xiao Xian stood on the highest floor of the Flaming River Castle. From here, he could see the entire Flaming River Trading Point. It's still very small now, but in the future, it will definitely become very big. An expedition team was walking on a small path. Last year, this place was still a forest. However, after the Flaming River Trading Point was built, a few large tribes from the central region had carved out a path for themselves to pass through. They had beast carriages with them, so they were very ostentatious. Later on, more and more expedition teams passed by. As the number of people increased, the trees and grass didn't grow. Some of the larger tribes even used tamed beasts to pull their carriages. For convenience, there wasn't even a large rock on the path. Compared to other places in the forest, this path was much flatter. As more people passed by, this path became more famous. Although it was more convenient to travel here, it was also more dangerous because people would lie in ambush and rob them. Those who weren't strong and were timid rarely walked here. However, larger tribes who thought they were strong enough and weren't afraid of being robbed would walk here. At this time, the team that was walking here was a medium-sized tribe in the central region. Although it was not as powerful as those famous big tribes, it was still much stronger than most of the tribes. The people in this team were tall and sturdy. Their open chests revealed their firm muscles. Their skin was tanned from years of traveling. Their arms that held the large stone clubs were taut with distinct lines of muscles, showing how strong they were. At this time of the year, the temperature was still high. It was noon and the sun was high in the sky. The simple linen clothes of the people who were traveling were soaked with sweat. Many people took off their shirts to wipe their sweat and threw them over their shoulders. The people in the expedition team used their rough voices to discuss what they had seen and heard at the Flaming River Trading Point. They had just left the Flaming River Trading Point not long ago and bought many beast hide. They were heading back to their tribe. You don't say, the beast hides at the Flaming River Trading Point are really good. Of course, fearsome beast hides, how can they not be good? I heard that you can wear these hides in this season? It's quite cool to wear them. That's why they're expensive. Those with fur are better. It's a wise decision to go to the Flaming River Trading Point to exchange for beast hides. Haha, the children won't have to suffer from the cold this winter. Carefree laughter rang out in the forest as if they weren't worried about being overheard. They looked casual, but from time to time, they would look around cautiously. Even if there were people guarding the perimeter of the expedition team and people in front of them scouting the way, they still treated them with caution. Experienced travelers were already used to robberies. After leaving the Flaming River trading point, they had already killed 3 groups of people who wanted to rob them of their goods. There were about 300 people in the expedition team. The wooden cart in the middle was tied to a large wooden box. Inside were the goods they had exchanged at the Flaming River trading point. There were fearsome beast hides, dried fearsome beast meat, fearsome beast horns, etc. These were the reasons why they were willing to come all the way to the Flaming River trading point. Where their tribe was located, it was cold in winter. Generally, the hides of wild beasts were limited in keeping them warm. The totem warriors were fine, they could wear thin hides, but the little ones in the tribe couldn't bear the cold. They were especially prone to falling ill in the cold. Although the adults in their tribe were very strong, they were very weak when they were young. Every winter, there were children who fell ill and died because of the cold. The shaman couldn't do anything about it. He only said that it was a test for the little ones. Later, they found that fearsome beast hides were better for protection, so they started to collect fearsome beast hides. However, on the mainland, fearsome beasts were only found in the fearsome beast forest. Other than the grasslands, fearsome beasts were rarely seen in other places, unless the tribe reared them. What kind of place was the fearsome beast forest? Not only was it far away from their tribe, even if they went there, it would be more dangerous and they might suffer more losses. The chief of the tribe would never agree. When the Yanjiao tribe was in the fearsome beast forest, they didn't take out large amounts of beast hides to trade. Their tribe was far away, so they didn't get much information. Until the Flaming River trading point was established, more and more fearsome beast hides flowed into the central region. Their reputation in the trading point grew, but the price was very high. They heard that during the hot season, the beast hides would be cheaper, so they organized this expedition. They were very satisfied with the goods and discussed going there again next year. Although they wanted to go to the Flaming River trading point more often to trade for beast meat, it was too far away and took too much time. Also, they would encounter more trouble and there would be more people taking shortcuts, so there would be more casualties. As the team was talking, the person in front suddenly stopped in his tracks. The person behind the team also stopped talking and became alert. For a moment, the forest was so quiet that only the chirping of birds could be heard. The wind in front of them carried a hint of the smell of blood. The people at the back of the group stuck their heads out to look ahead. They saw that on this road, about 100 meters ahead of them, there was a person sitting on a large rock beside the road. The person was alone, but he gave them a very dangerous feeling. He looked even bigger than the two of them. If he stood up, he would give them a lot of pressure. Not only that, the person's greenish-gray skin was covered with totemic patterns that they had never seen before. His clenched fists were bigger than their faces and were stained with blood. At his feet, there were about 10 people lying in a mess. These people were all dead. None of them were injured by a sharp weapon. It was probably just a big fist that killed them. Before they got close, they could feel the strong murderous aura coming from the person. The person looked up at them. His sunken eyes were as fierce as a heavy axe, as if he was going to cut them down in the next moment. This made many people in the team tense up. Even the scavenger birds that rushed over only rested on the trees at the side because of the person. They did not dare to go down and peck. The team would not stop or change their route because of the person in front. They first sent a group of people to test the person, but the person was silent and did not even bother to look at them. This attitude did not make them unhappy. Instead, it made them heave a sigh of relief. They had traveled for so many years and met many people. Those talkative people who seemed to be friendly and easy to talk to could very well be snakes in disguise. On the other hand, this kind of silent person who exuded an aura of, "I can't be bothered with you guys," made them feel more at ease. Because, as long as they did not provoke such a person, the other party would not make a move. There were many people in their team, and they were confident that they could win against such a person. However, if they really fought, there would definitely be unnecessary casualties. If they could avoid it, they would avoid it. As for the dead people on the ground, based on their experience, they were more likely to ambush and rob them. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong was the rule of survival. You don't even know who you can and can't touch, and you still want to learn how to rob others? You are simply courting death. You deserve to be killed. The leader of the team retracted his gaze and signaled for everyone to continue on their way. They were still on guard against that person. However, even when their team had completely walked past and was far away, the other party did not spare them a glance. Only when the people at the back of the team turned around to look, that person stepped on the head of the corpse lying at his feet and crushed it. The team left even faster. When the team had completely disappeared from sight and not a single sound could be heard, the person who originally had a murderous look in his eyes and looked like he was going to start a massacre in the next moment suddenly changed. It was like a heavy axe that suddenly had a handle left, and it was even made of cork. That person stood up from the rock and arched his back to look at the bushes not far away. His eyes were filled with respect and flattery. "Master, they are all gone." Following the rustling sound, a person walked out from behind the bushes. The person was dressed in gray cloth and did not look strong. He was about the same as an ordinary person. There was a sense of elegance in the way he patted the grass. Compared to the big guy next to him, he was like a child standing next to an adult. After walking out of the forest, the person in gray cloth bent his 4 fingers slightly. The tip of his thumb moved back and forth between the knuckles of the other 4 fingers. Then he said, "We will be there in 5 days." When he lifted his foot and walked out, he swept a glance at the people on the ground and did not look any more. If he came alone this time, he would probably have been hacked to death. However, who told him to bring slaves? There was an old saying among the nobles that if you want to beat the master, you have to look at the dog first. You can't even beat the dog, and you want to beat the master. Chapter 672. There were 3 entrances to the Flaming River trading point. Under normal circumstances, this was not a good time to travel. Even in the few large trading points in the central region, it was the quietest time of the year other than the coldest winter. Travel teams usually avoided the cold and hot weather when traveling. However, since the weather had warmed up before the full moon, the temperature had yet to drop. The Flaming River trading point was bustling with activity. Most of the travelers were here for beast hides because beast hides were very cheap at this time of the year. Most of them were high-quality fearsome beast hides. Yanjiao increased their patrols and guards. To the travelers, they thought it was because there were too many people here that they had to increase the number of patrols. The people who initially had other thoughts also temporarily stopped after seeing the strengthened guard. A few days ago, there were people who tried to force people to buy and sell goods in the trading point. When they were bumped into by the Flaming Horn patrol team, they were immediately thrown out. Luckily, the troublemaker was smart and did not draw his sword. If he drew his sword on a Yanjiao patrol team, he would be dead. In the face of a stronger force, even if they were unhappy with the rules, they had to follow them. Luckily, most of the travel teams liked this place. After being punished time and time again, the people in the trading point became much more obedient. As for everyone's misunderstanding, the Flaming Horns did not explain. Koan Tu was on duty at the largest entrance of the trading point today. After he returned from the Flaming River with Xiao Xian, his status among the guards had risen. Those who could be brought out by the first elder were always envied by others. When Koan Tu was resting, he would also talk to the team about the expedition. He knew what to say and what not to say. If he said something that shouldn't be made public, he wouldn't be able to follow the expedition in the future. No matter what they did during their break, they had to be on duty. Koan Tu was originally thinking about Caesar's third eye. Today, Caesar came to the trading point with Xiao Xian, but he did not see Caesar's third eye. However, now was not the time to think about this. He suppressed his curiosity and focused on guarding. A whistle came from the forest in the distance. Kuan Tu and the others' expressions changed. They raised their guard again and looked in the direction of the whistle. Since Yanjiao's patrols had expanded their patrols, the area they were patrolling had also increased. Those who wanted to rob outside the Flaming River trading point had no choice but to retreat further. The whistle just now was a warning to the guards to be on high alert. A dangerous person was coming. If it was just a regular robber, the patrol team would not have issued such a whistle. What's wrong? Xiang Chen, who was in charge of guarding the perimeter, was originally at the other door. When he heard the commotion, he immediately rushed over. There's a troublesome person. Kuan Tu stared at the path in the forest. There was no cover there, so they could see clearly if someone was walking there. Not long after, a voice came from the other side. It was a human voice. Kuan Tu and the others originally thought that it must be a large group of people from other tribes that could make the patrol team send out such a warning signal. However, they didn't expect that other than the patrol team, there were only two strangers walking out of the forest. When they saw the two people, including Xiang Chen and Kuan Tu, the guards' eyelids twitched. They had interacted with many people, so they could distinguish between those who had merged their fire seed and those who hadn't. Up until now, other than the Rain tribe and the Drumming tribe who had merged their fire seed, none of the other members of the expedition team had merged their fire seed. But now, the two people who came over were both people who had fused with fire seeds. Especially the big guy, he gave off a dangerous vibe. No wonder the patrol team sent out such a warning signal. These people were over 3 meters tall and had a sturdy physique. They exuded an aura more ferocious than a fearsome beast. It would be strange if they were not on guard. Anyone who saw them would be on high alert. Xiang Chen looked at the two strangers brought over by the patrol team. He was suspicious. Others might not know, but he was called to a meeting every few days by Zheng Luo. Naturally, he knew some things that others did not. Last time, Zheng Luo told them that there were people coming from the other side of the sea. Were these two people from the other side of the sea? Why did they come to Yanjiao? No matter what, they had to be on high alert before they knew the other party's background. The people who came from the other side were cunning. If they could make it here alive, they must be strong. Xiang Chen's gaze landed on the plain-clothed person who did not look like he could fight. Although his clothes were tattered in many places, he did not look pathetic at all. He even had a faint smile on his face. He looked very gentle. However, this person made Xiang Chen even more vigilant. The big guy next to him was obviously protecting this person. Xiang Chen was all too familiar with this kind of attitude. He had seen it many times in the slave master's city on the other side of the sea. It was a master-slave relationship. The word slave-master made the hairs on Xiang Chen's arms stand on end. It was as if he was about to enter battle mode. The patrol team member who brought them over had a strange expression on his face. When he saw Xiang Chen look over, he explained, "They're here for Grand Elder." He paused, then lowered his voice. "His name is EC. Someone from the E family of the 6 tribes?" Xiang Chen's frown deepened as he looked at the person who was smiling warmly in front of him. EC smiled but did not answer. He just stood there. Xiang Chen stared at EC for a few seconds, then glanced at the person next to EC. "Grand Elder happens to be here today. Come with me." Xiang Chen brought EC and the big guy into the city and headed towards the Flaming River Castle. After they walked away, the guard at the gate asked the patrol team, "What happened?" "Don't mention it. We were patrolling when we heard screams. When we went over, we saw that big guy." The person who spoke made a pulling gesture with his hands. He ripped a person in half. Those were probably robbers. I didn't expect to meet such a tough guy. Inside the Flaming River Castle, Xiao Xian was reading the animal skin scroll that was delivered today when he heard someone report that Xiang Chen had brought two strange people over. They said they were looking for him. Xiao Xian was still wondering who they were. When he saw EC, he was surprised. "Why are you here?" Xiao Xian still had an impression of EC. They had met at the small field near Jiju's field. He could understand if the other members of the E family came over. But shouldn't this person be guarding that small field and helping people settle accounts? When EC saw Xiao Xian, the first thing he said was, "Long time no see." The second thing he said was, "Is there anything to eat?" Xiao Xian gestured for someone to bring some food over. "Bring more. Qing Fu has been hungry for a long time. He might eat more," EC added. "How shameless!" Zheng Luo sat on the side and observed the two. The big guy was just a slave. No matter how strong he was still a slave. What he cared about was why the E family came all the way here. Their tribe wasn't close to the E family. Not only that, they didn't have a good relationship. The E family had contributed a lot to the people who tried to kill them back then. Xiao Xian looked at the big guy who was standing there quietly. After EC spoke, his eyes lit up and he couldn't help but gulp. He looked starving. The grasshopper that EC had mentioned just now was none other than this person. "Your slave is not bad. He was able to escort someone here alive." This was not a simple person. EC sighed. He sensed Zheng Luo and Xiang Chen's wary gazes. He didn't beat around the bush. "I'm here to seek refuge with you." Zheng Luo and Xiang Chen didn't believe him at all. The E family of the 6 tribes, a noble from the royal city, came all the way here to seek refuge with the Yanjiao tribe? "Do you think I'm stupid?" Xiao Xian was only surprised for a moment before asking, "Has there been a change in the situation there? The land under my name has been taken back to recruit people. I can't do divination, so I can't survive. I have to find another way." "So that's why he came here?" Zheng Luo and Xiang Chen still didn't believe him. The slave masters were too cunning, especially the E family. Just then, someone came over with roasted beast meat. Qing Fu's eyes were glued to the meat, saliva dripping from his mouth. Even so, he didn't eat. Instead, he looked at EC. "Eat," said EC. Qing Fu grinned excitedly. Then he pounced on a roasted beast leg and began chewing. This man was scarier than the Ji tribe when he smiled. Everyone in the room thought at the same time. When Qing Fu smiled, her 4 fangs were much longer than the rest of her teeth. She looked like a ferocious beast that was about to bite someone. But this was the man they were looking for. He didn't have a trace of murderous intent. In fact, he looked calm and happy. If one didn't look at him and just felt his aura, he would be temporarily classified as harmless. Even the Yanjiao people, who were sensitive to auras, could sense it. Qing Fu has fearsome beast blood in his veins. EC ate the meat unhurriedly. It's said that Qing Fu's ancestors were from a certain tribe. Later, the fire seed disappeared in large quantities. After merging with the fire seed, the tribe dispersed. I don't know which tribe it was exactly. It's been too long and no one can say for sure. All I know is that half of the people in that tribe have fearsome beast blood in their veins. They are strong, powerful, and have amazing recovery abilities. Unfortunately, they aren't smart. A natural humanoid war machine with low IQ. This was EC's evaluation of Qing Fu and his tribe members with fearsome beast blood in their veins. If they're left alone in the forest, they'll die soon. They don't know how to tell directions and can easily fall into traps. No matter how strong they are, they can't make up for that. However, it's good to be a slave, EC said. It wasn't the Yanjiao people's savage and ferocious aura, but it was closer to the natural wild aura of the fearsome beasts in the forest. Someone with fearsome beast blood in their veins. Did that mean Qing Fu was a half-beast man? No wonder Qing Fu looked like a fearsome beast in the forest at first glance. His ancestors had strong tastes. Chapter 673. Grasshopper didn't speak much, so Jingluo and the rest thought he was just a dumb slave of few words. EC had also said that this slave's race wasn't very intelligent, but the reason Grasshopper didn't speak much was because he wasn't familiar with the local language. When EC spoke to Xiao Xian and the rest, he used the local language which he had learned after coming here. It was hard to imagine that he had learned most of the local language in just 20 to 30 days. After the disaster last year, things didn't go well over there either, right? Xiao Xian asked. Not only did things not go well, it was terrible. EC's heart bled when he thought of his farm's harvest. Actually, the year the Flaming Horn tribe caused such a huge commotion, there was a snowstorm in winter. It was even colder than the previous year. Winter came earlier in King City, and it often snowed heavily. My little farm didn't have a good harvest. If it weren't for a batch of grains that was harvested before winter, I'm afraid we wouldn't have anything to eat. The Golden Grain Farm wasn't doing too well either. Even though we predicted the winter disaster, we still couldn't avoid losses when it really hit. EC smiled mockingly. But now that the weather has returned to normal, I don't have to rely on the farm anymore. Actually, ever since Yanjiao caused a ruckus, the atmosphere in Royal City has been irritable. Especially the Yi family, many of them couldn't sleep at night. After last year's disaster, there were even more people who became restless. I'm sure you know why. Rock Hill City? Asked Jingluo. You could say that, but to be more precise, the Yi family isn't interested in Mu Han's descendants. Oh, I should say the Sure family of Rock Hill City now. Mu Han has already abandoned his tribe's name. The Yi family of Royal City doesn't care about the Sure family of Rock Hill City. What they care about is the bad luck that year. Bad luck. Jingluo didn't understand what EC meant. Xiao Xian remembered something he had heard before. Yi Xiang of the Yi family? The Yi family that came with Mu Han from the Mu family? Not bad. EC's interest was piqued at the mention of this. Mu Han and Yi Xiang were extremely talented back then. The results of the Yi family's divination are actually starting to come true now. You look like you're looking forward to their battle, Xiao Xian said. EC didn't deny it. I was also forced away by the Yi family, but I wasn't as pitiful as Yi Xiang was. I didn't have his talent either. Now, the 6 noble families of the royal city are starting to recruit tribesmen, just like the Linlu tribe. Most of the money in the hands of us, who have no talent and no future, is being used to recruit people. Xiao Xian had seen EC's situation before. Although EC's words made sense, he didn't fully believe them. Tell me, what's your goal? EC's smile faded. I want to see what the bad luck from back then has done in the past 1,000 years. I'm afraid you don't know this, but not long after the disaster, the royal city sent people to guard the borders of the mainland to take a look. In the end, other than 2 people who were purposely let go, the rest all died. After Yanjiao crossed the sea, the royal city specially sent a group of people to guard the border. Some of the smaller tribes living there were forced to migrate. Because the Yi family's divination predicted a possible danger, most of the people stationed there managed to avoid the disaster. Unfortunately, after crossing the sea, almost all of them died. Xiao Xian only heard that there were strange movements in the desert. Perhaps EC's words were part of it. The 2 people who were let go said there were monsters. There were a lot of them, and they looked like humans but weren't. Those must be Yi Xiang's work. I'm very curious. Unfortunately, my status in the Yi family isn't high enough, so I can't get close to those things. Plus, I was forced to find a way to come here. But as you know, the Yi family isn't the type to fight, so I brought my own slaves. EC looked at Xiao Xian and the rest's reactions and continued, after I came here, I was unfamiliar with the place and my personal strength was limited. I heard about the Flaming River trading point in Yanjiao, so I came here to join you. How did you get here? Jingluo's sharp eyes looked at him. Crossing the sea and crossing the desert was no easy feat. It wasn't that easy to fool them. Issei didn't panic. He explained, "It's a long-winged bird." The long-winged bird's wings were long and well-developed, could fly for long distances, and was one of the best among flying birds. Its size ranged from half a meter to a few meters long. Some even had a wingspan of 10 meters. Not only could they fly, but they could also hunt in the water. I know someone whose slave is a long-winged bird. I only borrowed his bird for a short period of time. That cost me all my savings. Issei turned to Xiaoxian. Have you seen those monsters in the desert? No. Jingluo didn't look happy. How about this, you take me in. If you can catch those monsters, let me take a look. After all, the Yi family made them. I might be able to answer your questions. What do you think? Jingluo was about to say something when Issei added, "Of course, I'm not a freeloader. I can help you with your accounts. Your grand elder, Xiaoxian, knows my abilities. Although I can't perform divination like the other Yi family members, I'm confident in this. Also, my slave, Grasshopper, can do some manual labor. He's as strong as any of you." Issei didn't say anything. He looked at Xiaoxian. Seeing Xiaoxian nod, he took out a beast skin scroll and looked at the distribution of houses. In the end, he chose the house closest to the Flaming River Castle. Of course, Issei didn't have a single cent on hand right now. They wouldn't give him food, clothing, and accommodation for free. That was why Issei put it on credit for now. Issei and a full grasshopper were brought to the house arranged for them. After they left, Jingluo asked Xiaoxian, "How trustworthy do you think his words are?" 50-50. "We'll keep him under our watch for now," Xiaoxian said. Jingluo thought so too. Although he didn't like the 6 major tribes in the royal city, he had to admit that the Yi family members were all very capable. Even if they couldn't perform divination, they couldn't be underestimated. They'd keep him under their watch for now. If he could help Yanjiao, it would be good. But if they found anything that would harm the tribe, they'd kill him immediately. At this moment, an eagle screeched in the sky. Xiaoxian and Jingluo's expressions changed at the same time. They didn't want to think about Issei anymore. The eagle screeched just now. 2 days ago, Xiaoxian received a beast skin scroll from the Hui tribe's giant mountain eagle. It said that they would send the monster they caught over, but they didn't know the exact time. Xiaoxian told Cha-Cha to keep an eye on the sky for these 2 days. Giant mountain eagles had stronger senses. If an eagle returned to the tribe, it would definitely notice. Cha-Cha's screeching just now was to tell Xiaoxian that the goods had arrived. The two of them rushed to the top of the Flaming River Tower. A giant mountain eagle landed with a long wooden box in its talons. This was an eagle from the Hui tribe. There were people on its back. When Issei asked them if they'd seen the monsters in the desert, Xiaoxian said he hadn't. That was the truth. On the Yanjiao side, only Xiaoxian had seen them before. When Xiaoxian went to the grasslands to deliver the invitation letter, he saw the humanoid monster when he went to the Hui tribe. Is this it? Jingluo walked over curiously. That's it. But it's best to move it into the house before opening it. We don't want to see Yang Guang. We used medicine to seal it. If we see Yang Guang, the medicine won't work, said the Hui tribesman who came over. Jingluo didn't say anything. He carried the coffin-like wooden box and carefully moved it into a secret room in the Flaming River Castle. There was no one else except the Hui tribesmen, Xiaoxian, and Jingluo. After closing the stone door, there was no light. Xiaoxian took out a water moonstone to light up the room. The square wooden box was like a coffin, lying quietly in the gloomy secret room. Even before it was opened, it gave off a strange and eerie feeling. Jingluo shivered inexplicably. Open it. Xiaoxian gestured to the Hui tribesman who brought the goods over. The other party nodded and took the dagger from Xiaoxian. His gaze lingered on the green metallic dagger for a few seconds, then he cut the rope that tied the wooden box. The wooden box was tightly bound by the rope, but the dagger was very sharp. With a swipe of the dagger, the rope was cut off without much effort. When he returned the dagger to Xiao Xian, the Hui tribesman's eyes flashed with reluctance. He was very envious of Yan Zhao's weapon material. He untied the rope and opened the lid. The creaking sound of the wooden planks was very clear in the secret room. After opening the lid, Xiao Xian saw what was inside. His first thought was, a mummy? Inside the wooden box, the Hui tribesman wrapped the goods inside with animal skin. The thick fur acted as a cushion, and the goods were wrapped in green cloth. They could barely make out the shape of a human. A strange smell wafted out with a hint of decay in it. Zheng Luo gulped. This is it. This was the monster that everyone was afraid of, the monster that even the nobles in the royal city on the other side of the sea were worried about? The cloth has been soaked in medicine. Wrapping it like this will slow down the decay. If Elder Xiao Xian wants to see it, you can take the cloth off, but then we won't be able to stop it from rotting faster. The Hui tribesman said, Our shaman said it's best to leave it here and not bring it into your tribe. Xiao Xian nodded, indicating that he understood. The reason why they moved the item to the Flaming River trading point and not to Yanjiao's tribe was mentioned in the animal skin scroll they received before. The Hui tribe's shaman said that this monster was too strange, so it was best to leave it far away from the tribe. He also found that the closer it was to the fire seed, the faster the monster rotted. Although Yanjiao no longer had the ancient fire seed, there were many Yanjiao people at the Yanjiao tribe's headquarters, so the fire seed's aura was still very strong. Considering all these reasons, in the end, Xiao Xian decided to let the Hui tribesman move the item to the Flaming River trading point first. Then he took out a prepared animal skin scroll and handed it to the other party. This is what your chief and shaman wanted. The other party took the animal skin scroll and carefully kept it close to his body. After receiving the item, he didn't want to stay here any longer, so he bid farewell and left. There were other people waiting for him not far away from the Flaming River trading point. Of course, he wouldn't be the only one to deliver the important item, but he didn't want to attract too much attention. That was why he came alone when he got closer. Xiao Xian gave the Hui tribesmen a summary of the experiences of their tribe, the Rain tribe and the Drumming tribe. Although after the Flaming River Grand Banquet, more people knew about the changes in Yanjiao's fire seed, and even the fact that the ancient fire seed could fuse into a tribesman's body, Xiao Xian had told the other major tribes about it, but they were still hesitant. Now that the Hui tribe had made the first move, it seemed like they had decided to fuse with the ancient fire seed. As thanks, the Hui tribe sent the monster Xiao Xian requested. They wouldn't be able to get anything out of it if it was left in the Hui tribe anyway. Plus, this monster had rotted even more, so the Hui tribe's chief felt like there was no point in keeping it. When Xiao Xian suggested it, he agreed without much thought. After the Hui tribesman left, Zheng Luo looked at Xiao Xian for his opinion. Should we open it now? Or wait for the others to come? Let me take a look first. Xiao Xian put on a pair of gloves made of fish skin. The cloth wrapped around the monster was covered in antiseptic, so he wouldn't pull it off with his bare hands. The cloth wrapped around the monster from its feet to its head. Naturally, the process of unwrapping it was the opposite, starting from the head. Zheng Luo stood on the side and watched as Xiao Xian used the greenish-gray fish skin gloves to unwrap the cloth around the monster's head. As the cloth was unwrapped, the monster's head was revealed. Zheng Luo's facial muscles twitched as he looked at the face that was so rotten that it was unrecognizable. This is a human? Zheng Luo only knew from the Hui tribe's animal skin that goods had a high degree of decay, but he thought he had seen it all before, both human and beast. But now that he saw such a strange face, he felt a chill run down his spine. This was different from normal decay. This monster was more like a weathered rot. When Xiao Xian unwrapped the cloth, there was a creaking sound. There were even pieces of dried flesh stuck to the cloth. They were black, as if they had been dyed with something. As the flesh was peeled off, the bones underneath were also exposed. The Hui tribe said that only the bones were left. This was probably what they meant. Once the skin was peeled off, the bones were exposed. A person like this is walking in the desert? How can there be such a person? Which tribe are they from? Jingluo was still wondering if some tribe was born with such a unique bone structure. For example, Yi slave did not have pure human blood in his body. Xiao Xian shook his head. The last time I went to the Hui tribe, it wasn't like this. Now it's just dried up. Jingluo breathed a sigh of relief. He was wondering why the chief had such a strange appearance. So it wasn't like this from the beginning. However, Jingluo breathed a sigh of relief too early. As Xiao Xian unwrapped more and more of the cloth from the goods, the legendary monster finally revealed its true appearance. Just by looking at his head, he might only find it a little strange, but if he looked at his torso, he would discover an even bigger secret. This monster did not have any organs. Its torso and abdomen were deeply sunken. Even if it was air-dried, it would not be like this. Jingluo was sure that there were no organs under the dry skin of this monster's abdomen. Jingluo's first reaction was, did the Hui tribe cut it open? No, not the Hui tribe. They don't have that kind of hobby. The Hui tribe would never cut open a human or beast unless it was prey they were about to eat. Then how? Jingluo stuttered, not knowing how to express his thoughts. He had a guess but did not want to believe it. How was this possible? The monsters they were talking about in the desert were actually humans with no organs, no blood flow and no pulse, said Xiao Xian. Jingluo was shocked. But Kiki, how can they live without organs and blood flow? Who said they're alive? But if they're not alive, why are they so scary? Jingluo did not understand. You'll have to ask the people of Rock Hill City. I've never seen these humans in action. Xiao Xian could not answer. Could this be the thing Yi said the Yi tribe's ancestor made? Jingluo felt a chill run down his spine. Cold sweat soaked through his clothes and his scalp went numb. To them, these were dead people. But to a certain extent, they were still alive because they could move and cut people. I really don't know how the people of Rock Hill City made humans like this. Could it be that they made dead slaves like this? Jingluo muttered. Xiao Xian's eyelids twitched. There were many people in the desert, but the number of monsters was huge. If it was just the slaves who were alive, it might not reach the huge level. Especially after the battle in the desert, the number of people decreased sharply. But if the dead were included, then the number was inestimable. Not to mention, the people of Rock Hill City had been planning this for a long time. Made of dead people, Xiao Xian suddenly remembered when he was in the desert and snatched the core seed from the underground palace. At that time, he had a battle with Dao Yu in the underground palace. But after he killed Dao Yu, he met the people of Rock Hill City and could not bring Dao Yu's body back to the tribe. If the people of Rock Hill City could really make dead people into monsters like this, then would the long-dead Dao Yu also be brought back to be modified? Seeing Xiao Xian frowning as he stared at the monster, Jingluo scratched the goosebumps on his arms. The people of Rock Hill City are really scary. Luckily, their main target is the people on the other side of the sea. Xiao Xian closed the wooden box and moved it to another secret underground room in the Flaming River Castle. He had to study this carefully. At the very least, he had to know how to best deal with this kind of monster. Chapter 674. Below the Flaming River Castle, there were secret rooms built underground. Only Yanjiao's core members could enter these rooms. Besides Jingluo, the elder who was stationed at the trading point, Xiao Xian also had a secret room of his own. After Xiao Xian moved the monster into the secret room, the other core members of the tribe also came over to take a look at the legendary desert monster. They couldn't tell what it was, but even so, They had a basic understanding of the legendary desert monster. So this was what it looked like. The monster didn't breathe, had no organs, and didn't have a pulse. It was said that before it had rotted to this extent, it was like a dried salted fish. It was said that this monster had extraordinary abilities. Even if its limbs were chopped off, it could still attack without any interference. If its hands were chopped off, it could still pull out its own ribs. This was said by a traveler who once passed through the desert. In short, the desert became a place that travelers avoided like the plague. With the rise of the flaming river trading point, more and more travelers liked to go. Naturally, Yanjiao received more and more information about this place. There were places like inns and hotels in the trading point. There were no caves here. If you wanted to stay in a cave, you had to find one outside the trading point. However, people who came here didn't want to go out and risk their lives. Although the trading point wasn't completely safe, at least with Yanjiao's interference, most people didn't dare to cause trouble openly. That was enough. Living quarters cost extra, but tribes who had the ability to come here didn't care about this little expense. And in these places, travelers from all over the world would gather together and chat. To the Yanjiao people, this was a good thing. Chat without worry. Boasting was fine too. There was always a part of the truth in boasting that could be dug up, so they could gather more information. Tribesmen were like this. When it came to the secrets of their own tribe, they wouldn't say a word. But when it came to other tribes, they would be interested. Dig. Although most of the time they only said it to humiliate people, it was good to start a conversation. Isi's favorite thing was to take Qing Fu to listen to the travelers' gossip every day. He didn't know much about the tribes here, so it would help him to blend in better. Jingluo had gathered a lot of useful information recently. For example, people from the other side of the sea had appeared in the central and grasslands. Although the other expedition teams did not know much about it, Zhengluo could guess from bits and pieces. He believed there was a 70% chance it was as he guessed. However, Xiao Xian didn't pay much attention to these things. Ever since the Hui tribe sent that monster to him, Xiao Xian spent most of his time on it. He felt that if he could find out the secret of this monster, even if it was just a little bit, perhaps he could solve the problem that had been troubling him for a long time. One day, Guizhe finished concocting a new batch of pills made from veins of the sky. He planned to give Xiao Xian another bottle. He heard that Xiao Xian's pills were used to replace Caesar's eyes. Xiao Xian didn't have any left. However, she couldn't find him in the tribe. She asked Duokong, who often traveled between the headquarters and the trading point, "Where's Xiao Xian?" "The Grand Elder is in the underground secret room of the trading point," said Duokong. A few days later, Ta planned to bring a team out to hunt. He wanted to ask Xiao Xian if he wanted to go, but he couldn't find him in the tribe or the trading point. "Where's the Grand Elder?" "The Grand Elder is in the underground secret room of the trading point." A few days later, "Where's the Grand Elder?" "He's in the underground secret room of the trading point looking for that monster." Thus, Zhengluo and the others knew that if they wanted to find Xiao Xian, they had to go to the underground secret room of the Flaming River Castle. Zhengluo didn't understand. What could Xiao Xian see from that monster? However, the Grand Elder might be able to see something useful. If he really couldn't, they could call the tribesmen over. That thing was made by his ancestor, maybe he could see something. However, before Xiao Xian said anything, they wouldn't disturb Xiao Xian unless it was an emergency. On this day, Xiao Xian was still in the underground secret room of the Flaming River Castle. He had figured out something in the past few days. He remembered that when he went to the Hui tribe to deliver the invitation letter, when he opened the door and entered the room, he felt a strange, eerie fire seed energy. He had never seen a fire seed with that kind of eerie aura before. Now, the aura on this monster was still there. It was just a little fainter, but not completely gone. At that time, Xiao Xian couldn't investigate because he was in the Hui tribe. Now, he realized that the strange fire seed energy on this monster was not in its flesh, but in its bones. But how did the people who created these monsters connect the fire seed with the bones? How did they turn these dead people into monsters that could stand up again? Bones, what was in the bones? Blood marrow. Xiao Xian picked up his knife and prepared to cut it open. At that moment there was a knock on the stone door of the secret room. What is it? Xiao Xian opened the stone door and looked at Ao, puzzled. Usually, Ao would be guarding the headquarters with Zheng Luo. But why was Ao here now? He looked very anxious. Ao saw Xiao Xian holding a knife in his hand. He didn't know why he was holding a knife in the secret room, but now was not the time to think about that. Something happened over at the 1,000 grain gold, said Ao. As soon as he heard it was the 1,000 grain gold, Xiao Xian put the secret room aside and rushed back to the headquarters with Ao. There were guards at the place where the 1,000 grain gold was planted. Because the growth of the 1,000 grain gold would steal nutrients from other crops, there were no other crops within a certain range of the field. Not even a weed could be seen. The guards were right next to the field. If anyone suspicious approached, they would be discovered immediately. The 1,000 grain gold field was also surrounded by tall wooden poles. People outside couldn't see what was happening inside. After the 1,000 grain gold began to plant, the changes were even more drastic. Now, the grains were lined up neatly on the ears. In order to prevent insects, other animals, and even people with bad intentions from getting close to destroy the place, nearly 50 more guards were added to the place to kill the insects that wanted to break in. The field where the 1,000 grain gold was planted was one of the most heavily guarded fields. The relationship between the 1,000 grain gold and the Yanjiao people was closer than other grains. When they merged with the fire seed, the 1,000 grain gold played a big role. It could help the Yanjiao people merge with the fire seed better. It also had other effects. Among all the grains, the Yanjiao people liked the 1,000 grain gold the most. Ao valued it very much. The production this year was much higher than before. Ao was very happy. But in the past few days, he found some signs in the field that made him very angry. It's almost time for the 1,000 grain gold to ripen. I come here every day to take a look. The day before yesterday, I found that one of the 1,000 grain gold plants was missing a grain. I don't know what happened. I asked the people who look after the field. They didn't do it. I believed them. After that, I asked the guards to keep a closer eye on it. They didn't find anything strange. But Ao's face darkened. Yesterday, when I came to take a look, another plant was missing a grain. I kept a close eye on the people who look after the fields yesterday and asked them to keep a closer eye on it at night. But today it happened again. Xian, come and take a look. Xiao Xian looked over. The heavy ears of the 1,000 grain gold drooped down. Because they were not ripe yet, they were still green. Ao pointed at 1,000 grain gold. Because the 1,000 grain gold was much taller than a person, Ao had to look up every time he came here. If he wasn't familiar with every single 1,000 grain gold, he wouldn't be able to tell that the stalk was cut off at a glance. Yes, the area where the grain was missing had obvious signs of being cut by a sharp weapon. It wasn't torn. Did the robbers set their sights on this place again? Ao was angry. He couldn't think of anyone who could do something like this. After all, the robbers had done it before. I can't tell yet. Maybe not. Xiao Xian couldn't be sure. Could it be someone from the other side of the sea? Ao guessed. The people from the other side might not be as good as the robbers, but it's possible. After all, there are many robbers there, Xiao Xian said. Because there were no longer any fire seeds on the other side of the sea, the tribes had changed greatly. Some still existed as tribes, while others were formed by like-minded people, forming special groups. The members came from different tribes. Some of these groups killed for profit, some robbed others. Of course, there were also groups that operated as trade caravans or other businesses. There were many robbers too. They couldn't rule out the possibility. Ao's brows were furrowed so tightly that he could squeeze a heavy grain. This made him very worried. It hadn't even ripened yet and something had already happened. They didn't even know who did it. There wasn't even a trace of suspicion. If the 1,000-grain gold plants ripened later, would they encounter more problems? He wasn't afraid of trouble, but he didn't know where to start. If he didn't even know who did it, who could he vent his anger on? You were here during the day yesterday? Xiao Xian asked. That's right. Chi-Chi and the rest came here yesterday to fertilize. I watched them personally. There was no one suspicious. I didn't find any missing grains either. Ao wasn't suspecting the people in his tribe. He was just keeping an eye on them to prevent others from sneaking in. After all, some people could imitate others' appearance, figure, and even aura. Those who were slightly weaker or had poor observation skills, in order to distinguish them, he had to keep an eye on them himself. I'll be here tonight. Call Caesar over too, Xiao Xian said. I'll be here tonight too. I'll see who stole the unripened grains from here. Ao clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. If I find out who did it, I'll kill him. Chapter 675. The 1,000-grain gold was Yanjiao's most important crop. There had always been at least 100 people guarding it. After this incident, Ao had increased the number to 200. Now, he and Xiao Xian had decided to guard the area personally. They had to catch the thief. Actually, there were still many things that they did not understand about the thief. For example, why steal the grain before it was ripe? After all, an unripe 1,000-grain gold could not be used as a seed. It was even more impossible to eat it. The thief only stole a small amount each time. They even made several trips as if it was just a game. If the thief had the ability to not be discovered by the guards, why not wait until Yanjiao had harvested all the 1,000-grain gold before stealing? No matter what the reason was, Xiao Xian had to find the thief. Ever since Caesar's right eye had recovered and he had mastered the third eye, his eyesight had also improved. 2 elders, a 3-eyed wolf, and 200 guards. Even if they could not catch the thief, they should at least be able to find some traces, right? If they could not catch the thief in the day and did not notice anything strange, then it was very likely that the thief acted at night. Hence, when the sun set and the moons hung high in the sky, the guards on duty became alert. They stood outside the field where the 1,000-grain gold was planted. 2 people next to each other were even chatting. It was impossible for someone to pass between them without them noticing, unless the thief's movements were too strange. Xiao Xian, Ao, and Caesar were all guarding the field. Because the previous 3 instances of the theft did not occur on the same 1,000-grain gold plant, and the 3 plants were in different parts of the field, the thief was definitely not targeting just one spot. If he appeared, any 1,000-grain gold plant could be his target. They could only stand guard at the side. The light from the 2 moons in the sky was much dimmer than before. As the 2 moons moved further and further apart in the sky, their light would become dimmer and dimmer. However, at this time of the year, even though the moonlight could not illuminate the ground clearly, those with good eyesight could still see their surroundings clearly. It's too quiet. Xiao Xian looked at the 1,000-grain gold around him, and looked up at the sky. Ever since he came back from the Flaming River, the number of times he came here could be counted on one hand. At first, it was because of Caesar's eyes, so he didn't have the time to care about anything else. After that, he wrote down the steps to fuse with the fire seed for the Hui tribe. Recently, he had been staring at that monster, so he had indeed neglected things here. It's been like this for the past 3 days. Ao could not think of a reason. According to the guards, there were still a lot of insects eyeing the 1,000-grain gold at night. They would use all kinds of methods to get rid of them, but since 3 nights ago there have been fewer insects here. There were still some insects flying in the sky, but compared to the lively night before, there weren't many insect sounds now. They had stationed so many soldiers around the 1,000-grain gold plantation to guard against people with bad intentions. Secondly, it was to prevent insects from eating the 1,000-grain gold. Near the forest, there were many insects that ate the crop. The higher the quality of the crops, the more insects they attracted. In the future, there would even be birds coming over. However, it was very strange that they were in such a quiet place. As the night deepened, the human voices died down. Only the birds in the distance could be heard, as well as the faint roars of beasts further away in the forest. Xiao Xian's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and a sense of horror that almost made his scalp explode was suddenly born. Caesar, who was lying beside him, suddenly stood up. He opened his third eye and looked around. He had clearly sensed danger, but he did not know where the source of the danger was. Seeing Xiao Xian's expression and Caesar's reaction, Ao knew something was wrong. However, he could feel the change in the atmosphere, but he did not know why. In the sky, the insects that had been flying above the fields, as well as the sounds of the insects in the fields, had now inadvertently disappeared without a trace. Xiao Xian waited quietly. He slowed his breathing and tried his best to reduce his presence. This feeling reminded him of the fearsome beast he saw near the drumming tribe's river when he was traveling downstream. The only difference was that this feeling was much stronger than before. Was it a fearsome beast? Or a human? Xiao Xian could not find the answer. He did not hear any other sounds. At the drumming tribe, he could still hear the sound of water. But now, he heard nothing. That feeling was already there. Even if the other party was not near, it was definitely watching them from the surroundings. Suddenly, there was a faint sound in the air. It sounded like the wind blowing. Those who were weaker or further away might not have noticed it. It was coming from above the field. Xiao Xian looked in one direction as if he sensed something. Caesar was also staring in that direction, but he only growled. His fur stood on end, but he did not rush over. He looked very afraid. Ao's senses were not as strong as theirs. He only felt that something was approaching and could vaguely sense its direction. His intuition told him that it would not be easy to deal with. He could only grip the spear in his hand tightly and stare nervously in that direction. The guards around the field did not notice anything strange. There were only the two of them and the wolf here. But soon, that feeling disappeared. There was a faint sound in the air, but Ao could not pinpoint its direction. He only knew that the sound and the aura he was so afraid of came from somewhere in the air. Unable to determine what was going on, Ao looked at Xiao Xian. He wanted to ask Xiao Xian what happened. What should he do? Should he go and investigate immediately or continue to guard here? Even if he could not say it out loud, he could make gestures. Xiao Xian did not look at him. Xiao Xian's body stiffened. He slowly turned around and looked behind him. Ao did not understand. He was standing not far from Xiao Xian. When he saw Xiao Xian looking behind him, he turned around to look as well. The 1,000-grain gold behind them was like a small tree. Its long and narrow leaves extended outwards. Looking from below, one could see beautiful arcs. At this moment, on one of the 1,000-grain gold trees behind them, there was an object hanging upside down from the palm-wide leaf. The dim moonlight was enough for Ao to see what it was. Because of that, he could not help but gasp. However, he was so shocked and nervous that he did not even dare to breathe. He held his breath, and every muscle in his body seemed to be issuing the highest alarm. The blood in his body seemed to be flowing backward, and he felt as if he had been thrown into an ice cave in winter. Even moving a little bit was extremely difficult. It was a bat hanging upside down from the 1,000-grain gold leaf. In the bat's claws was a freshly cut 1,000-grain gold ear. During the day, Ao had said that if he found out who did this, he would definitely kill that person. But now Ao knew that he could not kill this thief. Chapter 676. To date, Xiao Xian had only met one bat that could appear so quietly behind them. That was when he was digging for fire crystals. It was also a creature that no one in Yanjiao wanted to provoke. And now, the bat behind Xiao Xian and Ao was the bat leader that they had seen that year. Although it was not a king beast, it was half a king beast. Back then, it had traumatized the Yanjiao people so much that they had to change their hunting routes. Facing such an opponent, would it be easy to kill it? Obviously not. Ao did not know what to do either. He just stood there, motionless. The cut on the 1,000-grain gold was very smooth. The thing that had cut it was very sharp and fast. They had thought that the robbers had used a sharp weapon to cut it, but now they knew that it was the bat leader. Who would have thought? The problem was, didn't the bat leader lead a group of bats on the mountain in the forest? Back then, the giant pit where they had found the fire crystals had been occupied by a group of bats. But after the bat leader appeared, it led the group of bats to a new territory. It was a whole mountain with a peak that reached into the clouds. That was a large territory, and it was not close to where they were. Even if the bat leader could fly fast, why would it fly to Yanjiao's farmland every day and harvest a grain every day? Could it be that it was interested in the 1,000-grain gold? Unripe 1,000-grain gold should not be attractive enough to attract it from the depths of the forest. Xiao Xian's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to deal with the current situation. Even if he was stronger than before, and Ao and the rest had improved due to the fusion of the fire seed, they would still be at a disadvantage if they fought this bat leader head-on. Under the moonlight, a terrifying creature was quietly hanging upside down on the 1,000-grain gold 2 steps away from them. It did not move at all. It just looked at Xiao Xian and Ao. Its gaze was more focused on Xiao Xian. Just as Xiao Xian was thinking about how to deal with it, the bat that was hanging upside down on the 1,000-grain gold moved its wings almost silently. It flashed by like a black shadow. It was not obvious in the night, and soon disappeared into the fields. That aura that made people nervous also disappeared without a trace. Caesar's fur was still standing. He opened his 3 eyes carefully and looked around. Phew, Xiao Xian let out a long sigh of relief. He would never have thought that it would be this guy. It left? Ao asked in a low voice. Yes, it's gone. When he heard Xiao Xian's answer, Ao sat down on the ground. He did not care if there was any organic fertilizer in the soil. Ao wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at Xiao Xian. It should be it, right? That's it. As he spoke, Xiao Xian walked in the direction where he first sensed the strange atmosphere. There, they found the 4,000-grain gold that had been cut. There was only one cut, and the cut was fresh. There was still green juice flowing out of the cut. Just looking at the cut, it was the same as the cuts on the other 3 trees that Ao pointed out to Xiao Xian. They confirmed that it was a thief, but they did not know how to deal with this thief that came to the 1,000-grain gold every day recently. If they fought, they would have to pay a high price. If they did not fight, the bat leader would come over every day. It was no longer in the depths of the forest. Xiao Xian had a feeling that it was not far from Yanjiao's headquarters. It had not returned to the Bat Mountain that it had occupied. Go ask the people in the hunting group if they noticed anything unusual when they were out hunting, said Xiao Xian. If there was no reason to attract the bat leader here, then it was very likely that something had happened at the Bat Mountain. Yes. Ao's face darkened. He was full of worries. If it was a thief, he was confident that he could fight. But he was not confident that he could defeat this opponent. When Xiao Xian and Ao walked out of the 1,000-grain gold's field, the guards outside were confused. Head Elder Ao, are you leaving just like that? Ao's eyelids drooped. He looked like he had a lot on his mind. He did not respond to the guard's words. Xiao Xian did not want to say too much. If he said too much, it would cause panic. He only said, be careful. If you encounter a situation that you cannot fight, retreat first. Before the guards realized what Xiao Xian meant, Xiao Xian and Ao had already left. Since the bat leader had left with the 1,000 grain gold, it probably would not come back. Even if it found Xiao Xian and Ao, it did not do anything at that time. It would not come back to do anything after leaving. Just like a few days ago, it would be quiet and no one would know. Xiao Xian and Ao hurried back to the tribe in the middle of the night. They woke up the hunting team leaders who were already asleep. "What's going on?" Mai yawned. When he entered the house, he found Xiao Xian and Ao, as well as Gigu and Ta, all here. The other leaders were also here. Soon, other than Duokong, Zhengluo and the rest who stayed at the trading point, everyone above the level of a leader was called here. This was a place built on the mountain specifically for important discussions. They pulled down the animal skin curtains on the windows to block out the light and sound inside. The elders and chiefs looked very serious. This made the atmosphere in the room tense. If it was not something important or urgent, they would not be called here at this time. Those who were still sleepy were now fully awake. They felt uneasy as they carefully looked at Xiao Xian and Ao's expressions. They wondered what had happened. Why was the Grand Elder, who had been holed up at the Flaming River trading point all this time, called here too? After the leaders who stayed at the headquarters had all arrived, they waited for the leader to speak. Ao looked at Xiao Xian and signaled for Xiao Xian to speak first. Xiao Xian took a deep breath and looked at the people in the room. With Xiao Xian's glance, everyone seemed to be even more nervous and uneasy. During the day, Ao told me that something happened in the 1,000-grain gold plantation. Someone harvested the grains. Xiao Xian briefly told everyone what had happened during the day. As expected, when it came to the 1,000-grain gold, everyone's eyes were burning with anger. They probably had the same thoughts as Ao. They wanted to catch the thief and beat him to death. However, after Xiao Xian's words, the fire in their eyes seemed to have been doused with a bucket of ice. Just like that, the fire in their eyes was extinguished. They shivered from the cold. Those who had followed them to look for fire crystals could still remember what had happened. "Why is it that bat leader?" Mai clenched his fists. He clenched them, then loosened them, then clenched them again. He was anxious and conflicted. "Isn't it always in the forest?" Cheng, who was also a leader, did not understand and panicked. "Cheng and Mai, you should be able to see the mountain from your hunting route. Did you notice anything unusual there?" Xiao Xian asked. Because of the Bat Mountain, the hunting group led by Cheng had changed their route and avoided the mountain occupied by the bats. Every time, they could only see the peak of the mountain from afar, but they never got close to it. He did not want to get into trouble. He even told his brothers who had returned from the other side of the sea and warned them not to go near the mountain. "I've never been there. I've only seen it from afar. I didn't see anything unusual." Ching scratched his beard. He was frustrated. If it were people from other tribes, he would not be afraid at all. However, that bat had left a bad impression on him. He still had a huge shadow in his heart. He could not help but shiver when he thought about it. "I've never been there either," Mai said. Thinking of something, Mai suddenly said, "I don't know what happened at the Bat Mountain, but we found something different on our hunting route." As soon as Xiao Xian heard this, he sat up straight and asked into the microphone, "You can tell me if there are any abnormalities. Mountains, trees, rivers, beasts, etc. Anything. It's on the other side of the mountain. It's the mountain where a king beast lives," Mai said. "Where the king stoneworm is." Xiao Xian rarely went there now. Most of the time, he went to the green area with the advance group. Therefore, he did not know what happened on the mountain that Mai mentioned. "That's it." Mai paused for a moment before voicing his doubts. Those of you who have taken that route should know that the markings left behind in the caves of the mountain won't be visible the next time you pass through. Xiao Xian nodded. Of course he remembered. There was a king stoneworm at the bottom of the mountain. It was not a legend. Also, because of the king stoneworm, the mountain would move under its influence. Some of the marks left on the cave walls would not be seen the next time they went there. Sometimes, a rope thrown there would be gone the next time they went there. The caves in the mountain were like intestines that could digest and absorb. They would absorb anything that had been left there for a long time without leaving any traces behind. The closer they went to the underground, the more obvious this phenomenon became. The marks on the caves would disappear faster too. This was also why people who took that route followed each other from generation to generation. They walked based on their own experience and memories. They did not simply leave marks. I didn't notice it at first, but when I went there a few times, I found a straw rope I threw there last time. Now that my thought about it, he regretted it. He didn't think too much about it back then. He thought that maybe the king's stoneworm had rested for a while, or maybe it had gone somewhere else for a stroll. When it came back, the mountain would be back to normal. King's stoneworm. Xiao Xian was confused. Did something happen that even the king's stoneworm was affected? When did you discover that the cave was no longer swallowing the marks like before? Xiao Xian asked. A remorseful look appeared on Mai's face. When I first discovered it, it was before last winter, but I didn't think much of it at the time. However, at that time, there were many other threats in the cave, and there were many ferocious beasts that I had never seen before. When we came out of the cave, we paid more attention to those beasts. In other words, the changes in that mountain had already happened before winter, or even earlier. Maybe it's because of the natural disaster, Xiao Xian said. But that bat leader only arrived recently. Something that could affect it must have happened recently too. There was a depressing silence in the room. If they could not find the reason, they would not be able to rest assured with such a huge threat lurking in the tribe and appearing every night. There was no fire seed in the tribe now. A beast of that level could quietly fly to the top of the mountain without anyone noticing. What should we do? Mai looked at Xiao Xian, then at the others. No one had any intention of speaking. They could not think of a suitable solution. We'll leave tomorrow and go to Bat Mountain to take a look. Also, we'll go to the mountain where the king's stoneworm used to live and see if we can find the reason, Xiao Xian said. That's the only way. But we have to guard the tribe well. Don't tell anyone about this until we find the reason. Otherwise, it will cause panic and give outsiders an opportunity to attack, Gigu said. After discussing the personnel arrangements, everyone left. However, no one could sleep tonight. The next day, after dawn, Xiao Xian asked Cha-Cha to take him, Ao, and 2 other leaders to the mountain. Ta, Mai, and the others took the ground. Caesar and Mai went together. Bats did not live on Bat Mountain in the past. But later, a leader emerged among the bats. They abandoned the small mountain with the sinkhole and took over the tall mountain. They even drove away all the other ferocious beasts in the mountain. Since then, the Yanjiao people called that mountain Bat Mountain. Xiao Xian looked at the mountain in the distance. Compared to the other mountains around it, that mountain gave off a faint sense of eeriness. And the closer he got, the clearer the feeling became. Because the bats occupied the mountain and drove away all the ferocious beasts in the mountain. Even if there were any ferocious beasts left, they would become food for the bats. As long as they were not careless beasts, they would not stay there. Who knew when they would be sucked dry by the bats? Because there were no other ferocious beasts on the mountain, even small ones, compared to the other mountains, it was exceptionally quiet and lifeless. In broad daylight, there were basically no bats flying out. It was eerily quiet. Xiao Xian did not enter the bat cave to search. Instead, he walked around. The bats are still here. They haven't left. The traces of activity are still fresh. There are bat droppings at the cave entrance, Xiao Xian said. So, only the bat leader left? Why would that be? Ao did not understand. That bat leader abandoned its minions and went to Yanjiao alone to steal grains every night? Xiao Xian could not think of a reason either. Let's go take a look at the king's stoneworm. Xiao Xian called Cha-Cha over and left with Ao and the other 2. They went to the mountain that they had not been to for a long time. Years ago, Xiao Xian had carried the remains of his ancestors out from there. If it were not for the ancestral bone ornaments, those remains would have been swallowed by the mountain. Once again, they came to the cave entrance that they had not seen for a long time. Xiao Xian looked at the handwriting on the cave entrance, bowed according to tradition, and then walked in. Chapter 677. Xiao Xian remembered that the animals living in this mountain were not very powerful. Because of the existence of the king beast, other powerful ferocious beasts were not allowed to live in this mountain. The weaker animals were no threat to the king beast, so it could ignore them. It was like a lion could ignore an ant, but it would not ignore a wolf that entered its territory. The Yanjiao tribe had lived here for nearly 1,000 years. Generations of hunting teams had passed through here and gone to the hunting grounds on the other side of the mountain. They rarely encountered any trouble in the cave. Only when new young warriors joined the team would the creatures living in the cave target them. Xiao Xian had encountered this in the past. Xiao Xian had not been here for a long time, but he knew what kind of creatures lived in the cave. However, when he walked into the cave, he clearly sensed many strange auras that should not have appeared here. It is indeed different. Xiao Xian remembered the path through the mountain. He didn't need Mai to lead the way, he could just follow the path in his memory. They were ambushed several times by some ferocious beasts hiding in the dark. Xiao Xian could handle them all. Otherwise, Mai would have told him about it. The stronger ferocious beasts in the forest should have known that the king stoneworm used to live here, so they all stayed away. Even if the king stoneworm was no longer here, they would still avoid this dangerous place for a short period of time. The higher the level of the beast, the sharper its senses. Even if the king stoneworm was no longer in the mountain, the aura it had left behind would still have a deterrent effect on them. The tip of the sword pierced through a 6-legged bug that attacked them and stabbed into the cave wall, leaving a dent in it. Not far from the dent, there were other marks left by sharp weapons. They were left behind by Mai's hunting team and had not disappeared yet. Walking in the cave, Xiao Xian released his senses to check if the king stoneworm had really left. Xiao Xian could sense the fire seed aura on people within a certain range. Even those who had not merged with a fire seed would have some aura on them, just not as strong. When they were traveling downstream, Xiao Xian could sense the fire seeds of the tribes around the riverbank because of the same ability. That was because of the power of inheritance. Compared to the totemic power that strengthened the body, the power of inheritance was more of a spiritual power. The stronger the power of inheritance, the stronger the power of inheritance. Xiao Xian could sense the fire seeds far away because of the power of inheritance in his body. Actually, Xiao Xian could sense the bat leader's location in the 1,000-grain gold field because of this ability. He could sense it when he was digging for fire crystals, but it was too blurry back then. That night, when he sensed the bat leader, it was even clearer. It was just that the bat leader had hidden itself too well. If it were any other fearsome beast of the same level, Ao and the rest would have sensed it from that distance. However, Ao's power of inheritance was not as strong as his totemic power, so his senses were not as good as Xiao Xian's. There was one thing that Xiao Xian did not tell Ao and the rest. When he sensed the bat leader, he saw a spot of light similar to a fire seed. That bright spot of light was the bat leader. How could a fearsome beast have the power of a fire seed on it? What surprised Xiao Xian the most was that the power of a fire seed on the bat leader was a little bit similar to the power of the Yanjiao's fire seed. He could feel the difference between the two, but the surprise was also obvious. If the power of the fire seed on the bat leader was 100%, then it was only 10% similar to the power of the Yanjiao. Of the remaining 90%, 10% was similar to another power in Xiao Xian's body. The remaining 80% was completely different from the power of the Yanjiao's fire seed. In Xiao Xian's sea of consciousness, There was not only the Yanjiao's totemic flame, but also the light shield that covered the totemic flame. The power of the Bat Leader was similar to the power of the light shield. Perhaps because of this, the Bat Leader did not attack the Yanjiao people. It did not mean that it regarded the Yanjiao people as its companions. Xiao Xian believed that the Bat Leader regarded the Yanjiao people as its little brothers. But it was the little bit of similarity that made Xiao Xian very confused. The only thing that could connect the Bat Leader with the Yanjiao was that the Bat Leader had absorbed the power of the fire crystals before it was separated from all the other Bat Leaders, and those fire crystals were burned by Xiao Xian with his own power. Xiao Xian did not know the real reason, and it was not the time to think about it. He just used the power of the fire seed and the Bat Leader to perceive the King Stoneworm under the mountain, which had not been known for many years. He had been in close contact with the King Stoneworm before, but he did not see it with his own eyes. But if he perceived the King Stoneworm again, he would definitely recognize it. Xiao Xian recalled the feeling of being almost petrified and turning every drop of sweat into stone. It was still very clear when he thought about it. Ao and the others, who were walking behind Xiao Xian, saw that Xiao Xian slowed down, but they did not urge him. Instead, they were on guard against the surroundings. If only Xiao Xian could use the rope divination to find out the reason. Ao thought in his heart. Xiao Xian sensed the surroundings. Because there were rocks all around, he could not perceive the fire seeds of other tribes like he could when he was on a long journey. Here, the range of his perception was greatly reduced. But according to Xiao Xian's memory, where the King Stoneworm had appeared, even if the range of his perception was reduced, as long as the King Stoneworm was still there, he should be able to detect it. However, nothing. Still nothing. Xiao Xian continued forward. He did not retract his perception. Even when he walked out of the cave and came to the other side of the mountain, he still could not detect the King Stoneworm. The King Stoneworm is indeed no longer here, Xiao Xian said. This was not good news for the Yanjiao people. They did not care about other beasts' territory changes, but it was different for a king beast. Generally speaking, king beasts would not easily change the location of their territory. For example, on the other side of the sea, the salt beast guarded its salt flats. Even if it was disturbed, it had no intention of leaving. Over here, the King Stoneworm that had not moved for 1,000 years had already left its nest. In fact, the King Stoneworm's territory was not small. The salt beast's territory was horizontal, more like flat land, but the King Stoneworm's was vertical. The mountain in front of them spanned an unknown distance. Although it was long and narrow, the peaks reached into the clouds. Very few birds could fly over it. Moreover, there was a large area underground. This place was not smaller than the salt flats. It was hard to understand why such a territory would be abandoned so easily. Xiao Xian went to find the cave he had carried his ancestors out of. He walked in for a while, but did not go too deep. There were also some beasts that had not come close in the past. It was rare to see the bones of some small beast. For this mountain that seemed to be able to swallow anything, bones and the like would not stay for long. But now, the leftovers of these predators had been left here for who knew how long. The King Stoneworm has indeed disappeared for a long time, Xiao Xian said to Ao and the others. Perhaps it left last year during the disaster. If the King Stoneworm had gone somewhere else, such as deeper into the forest, it would not have affected the Yanjiao tribe. But what if it had run to Yanjiao? The Bat Leader's movements were too sudden. If they did not figure it out, they would not be at ease. And if the King Beast did not do anything else, everyone would think that it had gone deeper into the forest to find a new nest. Given its level, as long as it did not encounter other king beasts, the other beasts in the forest would have to make way for it. What should we do next? Ao thought of the Bat Leader walking around the Yanjiao tribe every day. He felt as if there was a huge rock pressing down on his heart. It was difficult for him to even breathe. He was worried that the huge rock would fall down and cause a bloody scene. As long as the Yanjiao people do not take the initiative to attack, the Bat leader will not attack the Yanjiao people for the time being. After all, there were some similarities in the fire seed. If the Bat leader wanted to attack the Yanjiao people, it would have already attacked them. But during this time, they had not heard of anyone disappearing for no reason. Also, tell the wanderers in the tribe not to run around. The Bat leader may not attack the Yanjiao people, but I am not sure about the wanderers, Xiao Xian said. Although Ao did not understand the basis of Xiao Xian's words, he nodded in agreement. He also felt that the Bat leader would not attack the Yanjiao people for the time being. After all, there were several opportunities to kill the Yanjiao people in the past, but the Bat leader did not do so. But we can't go on like this. Even if the Bat leader did not attack, with such a dangerous creature around, no one could sleep well. Xiao Xian thought for a moment and said, "You wait here for Mai and the others. I will go to the Bat Mountain to take a look." Okay. Ao took the other two to find a place to rest first and wait for Mai and the others. Xiao Xian asked Cha-Cha to take him to the Bat Mountain. Previously, Xiao Xian had only walked around the Bat Mountain once, but this time, he planned to look around the Bat Mountain. There were several guesses about the Bat leader's strange behavior. One of them was that it was affected by the King Stoneworm's strange behavior. After all, at its level, it would not be easily affected by other beasts. To rule out this possibility, Xiao Xian had to look around the Bat Mountain. Was there any strange phenomenon that forced the Bat leader to give up on the Bat Mountain and run elsewhere? Not to mention that the Bat leader liked the Yanjiao headquarters. If that was the case, it would have gone there last year. Why wait until now? The 1,000-grain gold was too far away from here, and it was not ripe yet. It was unlikely that it was attracted by that. Xiao Xian sat on the eagle's back and looked down at the forest below. Cha-Cha flew at a height that was neither too high nor too low. Not only could he see the scenery below clearly, but he could also avoid the ancient trees and possible threats on the trees. In the past, Cha-Cha had suffered because he flew too low and was dragged down from the sky. The Bat Mountain was not on the hunting route of Mai's hunting team. Xiao Xian did not go there often, so there were many places that were unfamiliar to him. Cha-Cha's flight path was circling around the Bat Mountain. In the forest, there was a huge difference in temperature between different places. Sometimes, one side of the mountain was as cold as autumn, while the other side was as hot as summer. But in general, at this time of the year, the forest was still mostly green. The green ancient trees were the main color of the forest. The only thing that could compete with them were the tall mountains. From the middle of the mountain, there was a sharp decrease in the greenery. From green to gray rocks, and then to white snow on the mountain peak. The gray rocks on the cliffs separated the greenery under the blue sky. Xiao Xian was already used to such changes in color, but as he gradually flew out, Xiao Xian noticed something special. There was a short mountain there. Even if there were no trees on a normal short mountain, there would still be some grass. But there were only gray rocks there. As he flew closer, Xiao Xian could see more clearly. The gray-white short mountain stood out among the large expanse of ancient trees. "Let's go down and take a look." Xiao Xian jumped down after Cha-Cha flew lower. He landed not far from the short mountain. Crack, crack, crack. Xiao Xian stepped on the grass. It was obviously not the soft grass. He looked down. Some of the green grass had turned gray and was still very hard. Some of the surrounding trees had also turned into the color of rock. The closer he got to the short mountain, the more obvious the change was. At the edge of the short mountain, there were many rocks that looked like tree trunks. They used to be trees, but the upper half was broken. Only the lower half was left. Even the texture of the bark was very clear. Petrification. Others might not know about this change, but Xiao Xian already had a guess. Among all the people and beasts that Xiao Xian had seen, only the King Stoneworm could do this. What was it doing here instead of in its own nest? Xiao Xian walked up the short mountain. He could sense that the king stoneworm was not nearby, so he was not worried that he would be petrified as well. There was not a single blade of grass or tree growing on the short mountain. The rocks looked new. The king stoneworm had not been here for long. He continued walking up the short mountain. At the top of the short mountain there was a round hole about 2 meters wide. Xiao Xian squatted at the hole and looked down. He did not know how deep it was. Based on the curvature of the hole, the king stoneworm should have come out from underground. It just did not come out completely. It only poked its head out for a bit before going back underground. Because of the king stoneworm's movements, the ground had bulged and formed this short mountain made of rocks. Even the trees and flowers nearby had been petrified. The hole on the short mountain had narrowed as the king stoneworm retreated underground. When it had hardened completely, it could not shrink any further. That was how it was now. The Yanjiao people had thought that the king stoneworm's size should be about the same as the hole in the mountain. However, Xiao Xian felt that the king stoneworm should be bigger than the hole in the mountain. Just like the hole on the short mountain, as the king stoneworm left, the hole would shrink to varying degrees. However, these were all Xiao Xian's guesses. He had never seen the king stoneworm with his own eyes. Standing on the short mountain, Xiao Xian looked at the Bat Mountain. It was not close. Otherwise, Xiao Xian and the others would have discovered it when they first approached the Bat Mountain. However, it was not too far. At this distance, perhaps the Bat Leader could sense it. Could it really be because of the king stoneworm that the Bat Leader was forced to leave the Bat Mountain and go to Yanjiao? After all, in the Bat Leader's eyes, the Yanjiao people might be its underlings. Unable to be sure, Xiao Xian had Cha-Cha take him into the air to continue searching. They wanted to see if there were any more short mountains like this, especially in the direction of the Yanjiao tribe. If they found it in the direction of the Yanjiao tribe, then the Yanjiao people would be in big trouble. No one wanted to fight a king beast, even if the Flaming Horn tribe thought of the king stoneworm as a peaceful beast. Otherwise, they wouldn't have set up a hunting route that had lasted for almost 1,000 years. None of them had ever been attacked by the king stoneworm. However, no one could say for sure what would happen if they went up against a king stoneworm. Fortunately, Xiao Xian did not find any more short mountains like this one after searching in the direction of the tribe. Even so, he could not be completely relieved. Where did it go? Xiao Xian went back to the short mountain. Xiao Xian told Ao and the others had also come over. How about I go down and take a look? Xiao Xian said. Since the king stoneworm had gone through a place, there must be a tunnel underground. They could follow this tunnel to find out where the king stoneworm was. Chapter 678. Following the underground path was indeed the best way to find the king stoneworm, but it was also very dangerous. After some discussion, Xiao Xian, Ao and Ta went down to search. There was no need to go with too many people. It would be inconvenient if there were too many people. They put a rope down from the cave and slid down. They didn't have long straw ropes, so they tied several straw ropes together. They slid down for about 100 meters before landing on the ground. This meant that the king stoneworm moved up from here, then retreated down this path. Then, it changed directions and continued moving. Which way should we go? Ao looked at the two paths and couldn't make up his mind. There were two paths after they came down. One was the way the king stoneworm came from, and the other was the way it left. Xiao Xian looked carefully at the patterns on the stone wall. He touched the stone wall and pointed in one direction. It went that way, but let's go the other way first. Xiao Xian wanted to see if the king stoneworm came from that direction. Did it pass by Bat Mountain? If that was the case, then the movement of the Bat Leader could be explained. Ao and Ta understood what Xiao Xian meant, so they didn't object. They followed the direction the king stoneworm came from. Even though they were underground, Xiao Xian memorized the position on the ground before entering the cave. He had a universal eye in his hand. It can tell the direction without any sunlight or moonlight? Ta was surprised. Yes, Xiao Xian said. When he was asking the Yi tribesmen about this, he heard them mention that they used the universal eye when they were underground. However, only people with high status in the Yi tribe had the universal eye. After all, the universal eye was rare, so the Jing tribe didn't give it out often. To prove Xiao Xian's words, under the light of the water moonstone, a line opened up on the universal eye in Xiao Xian's hand. It was like a narrowed beast's eye. As the line expanded, the direction became clearer. Ao and Ta were both good with directions. As long as they knew the approximate position of the sun and estimated the current time, they could determine where Bat Mountain was. He continued to walk along the passageway. They came from there. Tower confirmed. The more they walked, the more certain they were that the passage came from the Bat Mountain. Increasing their speed, the three of them soon arrived at the Bat Mountain. How did he know that it was Bat Mountain? In addition to his own estimation, there was an upward passage there, but the passage didn't directly lead to the surface. It only extended from the underground for more than 20 meters. Do you think it's because the king stoneworm noticed the bat leader's tracks when it came here? That's why it wanted to go to the ground. But the bat leader reacted quickly and ran away as soon as the king stoneworm moved. Is it possible? Ao voiced out his speculation. That is indeed a possibility, Ta agreed. Bat Mountain should be above us. Even if it's not directly below us, it shouldn't be too far away. But why would the king stoneworm come out of its nest? Even if it's because of the cataclysm, after it came out of its nest, it should have returned after the cataclysm ended. Xiao Xian was puzzled. Maybe the king stoneworm wanted to change its location? Ta suggested. Xiao Xian didn't deny it. Let's continue walking in that direction. The three of them followed the direction the king stoneworm had come out of and continued to run in the 100-meter underground cave. There wasn't enough oxygen here. The further they went from the small mountain, the thinner the air became. This wasn't the king stoneworm's nest, so there wasn't much ventilation. Fortunately, the three of them had a high tolerance for the thin air. If they were beginner or intermediate totemic warriors, they might not have been able to hold on. Ao and Ta also wanted to know why the king stoneworm was running around after it came out of its nest. However, they soon found out why the king stoneworm didn't run back, but ran in another direction instead. Not far from Bat Mountain, there was a fault where the passageway was cut off. Moreover, there were traces of the king stoneworm making a turn here. This place should have been like this for a while. Only the cataclysm last year could cause such changes underground, Ao said. That means the king stoneworm might have been shocked by the cataclysm last year, so it left its nest and ran here in the chaos. However, the underground was also greatly affected by the cataclysm, so it couldn't find its way back after it came out. Ta didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even if the king stoneworm couldn't go back the way it came, it could have gone somewhere else. Why did it continue to run away? What if it couldn't tell the direction? Xiao Xian suggested a possibility. Ao and Ta fell silent. A king beast couldn't tell the direction? Shouldn't the higher the level, the smarter it was? We can't rule out this possibility, Ao said in the end. Xiao Xian sensed the surroundings. The stone walls here are much thicker than the other parts of the passageway. Maybe the king stoneworm stayed here for a longer time. The longer the king stoneworm stayed in a place, the more petrified that place would be. Xiao Xian could sense that the surrounding stone walls were different from the stone soil underground. It was a special kind of stone that the king stoneworm had petrified. Maybe the king stoneworm left its nest during the cataclysm last year and ran here in a panic. It might have stayed here for a long time, or it might have fallen asleep. When it woke up, the original path had been cut off by the changes underground, so it continued to move forward. Xiao Xian didn't want to think of the king stoneworm so badly, but this was the most likely possibility. If that was the case, the three of them could only sigh. This intelligence. No matter what the truth is, let's keep looking. Since they had reached the end of the passageway, the next step was to search in the direction the King Stoneworm had left. Hopefully, it wasn't in the direction of Yanjiao. The three of them were hopeful. They returned to the hill and told the others what they had found. After a short rest and some food, Xiao Xian and the other two continued to search along the passageway. 100 meters below the ground, the three of them ran along the same passageway. Along the way, the three of them found another hill that was similar to the one they had seen before. This proved that the King Stoneworm had appeared here before. It should have happened within the past 2 days. Xiao Xian looked at the petrified trees around the hill. Even the roots of the trees had been petrified, but the leaves on the treetops were still green and vibrant. The branches and leaves weren't wilting either. Based on his understanding of the forest, this wouldn't have happened more than 2 days ago. Let's keep looking. Ao was getting more and more anxious. Although they weren't heading directly towards Yanjiao, they weren't far off. Please don't head towards Yanjiao, please don't. Ao kept repeating these words in his heart. However, the further they searched, the heavier their hearts became. Xiao Xian looked at the universal eye in his hand and sensed their surroundings. This is the Flaming River? How is this possible? Ao and Ta exclaimed at the same time. Were they already at the Flaming River? But how could it be the Flaming River? Wasn't the Flaming River filled with water? That wasn't right either. Before the disaster, the river was more than 100 meters deep. After the disaster, the river wasn't that deep anymore. At most, it was a few dozen meters deep. Of course, some parts of the river might be even deeper, but now wasn't the time to think about this. Ao gathered his thoughts and pointed above his head. He asked Xiao Xian, "Are you sure this is the Flaming River?" "Most likely. There aren't any hard rocks not far from here, so it should be muddy water. Further away there's water." Xiao Xian couldn't tell the exact distance, but he could sense that there were muddy water and muddy water above them. Compared to rocks, muddy water didn't affect his senses as much. Plus, if they kept walking in this direction, they should be near the Flaming River, upstream of where Yan Jiao's headquarters were. In the past, when Xiao Xian was free, he would let Cha-Cha carry him upstream for a while. "So that means the King Stoneworm has already crossed the river?" Ta asked. "That's right. Although the King Stoneworm wouldn't have crossed the river towards Yan Jiao's headquarters, the three of them were slightly relieved. However, the Flaming River trading point was also on the other side of the river. If that place was attacked, it would be a huge loss for Yan Jiao. "Let's keep going." Ta was so worried he wanted to pull his hair out. They had been on guard for so long, but they didn't see anyone from the other side. They also didn't see the troublesome bandit. They thought the bat leader was already a big problem, but they didn't expect an even bigger problem. If it weren't for their strong mental fortitude, they would have panicked too. No matter where the King Stoneworm went, the three of them would continue to search along this path. "If we find anything strange, we'll retreat immediately," Xiao Xian said. Tracking the King Stoneworm was important, but his own life was more important. He couldn't afford to lose his life because of this. That was a king beast they were talking about. Plus, they were almost 100 meters underground. The terrain was advantageous for the King Stoneworm. If they really fought, the three of them would be crushed. As Xiao Xian and the other two continued to track the King Stoneworm, in a forest outside the Flaming River trading point. They were quite a distance away from the Flaming River trading point. After Yan Jiao expanded their patrols outside the trading point, some robbers had no choice but to retreat from their hunting area. They wanted to rob and get something, but they didn't want to go against Yan Jiao. What do you think those Yan Jiao people are thinking? What a busybody! Our robbery has nothing to do with them. A person sitting on a tree said, as he played with a dagger made from animal bone. Who knows? I don't like them anyway. I won't go into the flaming river trading point. A muscular man with a full beard and unkempt hair said in a low, muffled voice. A voice came from the thick grass nearby. The last time I went there, those Yen Jiao guards almost burned a hole in me. TSK, do they think I care about the things in their trading point? Even if they invite me next time, I won't go in. That's right, I won't go in no matter what. We'll just rob outside. Haha, we won't have to face those annoying Yen Jiao people, haha. Another person sitting on the tree said as he slapped his thigh. They were a group of robbers outside the flaming river trading point. There were more than 20 of them hiding here. Originally, there were about 50 of them, but they were in other places. If they found any prey, they would be notified. When they robbed, they would only choose those traveling teams that had fewer people and seemed easy to bully. They would not risk robbing those who were obviously not to be trifled with. Robbing also depended on one's eyesight. Those who did not have good eyesight would not even know how they died, not to mention robbing. The robber who was torn to pieces a few days ago was one of them. He didn't have good eyesight and robbed a weirdo who looked more like a beast than a Yen Jiao. He deserved to be torn to pieces. As for the person who said he was almost burned a hole in his body by the Yen Jiao guards when he entered the trading point, it was actually because a Yen Jiao patrol outside the trading point encountered them. They even killed a few of them. Luckily, they ran fast enough and weren't caught. Not long after that, they decided to enter the trading point to take a look and see if anyone had good stuff. They would wait for those people to leave the trading point before making their move. The Yen Jiao guards felt that their auras were familiar, so they kept staring at them. They were so nervous that they almost ran back. However, after that incident, they never entered the trading point again. They were worried that they would be caught by the Yen Jiao guards. They hated the Yen Jiao guards who stopped them from robbing. The few of them were spitting spittle as they criticized the Yen Jiao guards. Suddenly, one of the people in the tree looked at them sharply. "What's going on?" An extremely dangerous aura filled the air, but he wasn't sure where it came from. He looked around and didn't see anyone else. Yen Jiao patrols wouldn't patrol here. Who's here? The others stopped talking and went on alert. The forest suddenly became eerily quiet. Only then did they realize that something terrible had happened. Before, they could still hear the chirping of birds, but they didn't pay attention to it. Now that they stopped talking, they noticed the change. The first person to notice that something was wrong had cold sweat dripping down his forehead. He still couldn't find the source of the aura. It seemed to be coming from all directions. Moreover, the feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Even the slowest person in the group felt a chill that made his scalp feel like it was going to explode. His hand holding his knife was shaking uncontrollably. Generally speaking, when they didn't know what was going on, they would quietly hide and observe. However, this aura that shook their minds made it impossible for them to remain calm. Where was it? Everyone held their breaths and observed their surroundings. Even the movement of a flying insect would be detected by them. Nothing. Still nothing. Where did that aura that made them unable to even muster the courage to resist come from? There was no one around, not even a bird. Even the insects seemed to have disappeared at this moment. It was dead silent. Even the wind seemed to have frozen. Crack, 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 a faint sound came, stimulating their nerve. It was the sound of movement coming from beneath their feet. When they finally looked down, everyone was so scared that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Chapter 679. On the ground, the originally green grass and leaves started to turn gray from bottom to top. They did not look as flexible as before and became as still as stone. Not even the slightest tremor could be seen. No, it was not just the grass. On the ground, whether it was the soil or the flowers and trees, all of them were undergoing the same change. The brown bark, the green leaves, the yellow soil, all of them became the same color. Like the mutated grass, they became stiff. What was going on? How could it cause such a terrifying change to occur in this area? Manpower? No, they had never seen anyone who could change everything in such a large area like this. No matter what, the horrifying scene in front of them was beyond their knowledge. Looking at the changes that were spreading up from the ground, a cold chill penetrated the soles of their feet and spread to their entire bodies. It was as if they were not in the forest, but trapped in a vast glacier. The trembling from their bones stimulated their nerve. They could not stay here any longer. Run. The people who reacted the fastest had already exploded with their greatest power. At this time, they could not think of hiding anymore. They tried their best to raise their totemic power to the limit. The aura that appeared on their bodies with the increase of their totemic power, if it was in the past, would be as obvious as a fire in the dark night. But at this moment, under the suffocating aura, it was like smoke rising in the wind. Before anyone could see it clearly, it had already disappeared. Pale tiny. They were originally staying on the tree, but now they were jumping to other branches like monkeys running in a panic in the forest. The great fear made them unconsciously let out some meaningless screams. Other than running for their lives, they didn't even have the time to think about anything else. From the corner of their eyes, they saw that the ground under their feet was no longer a land of life with a mixture of colors. It was a land of death full of gray. All the plants, the insects hidden in the ground and the insects in the leaves, none of them were spared. They had already felt some changes in their bodies. It was only because of the strong resistance of the totemic power in their bodies that the changes were slowed down. But with the rapid approach of the huge aura that came from nowhere, the totemic power in their bodies would soon be useless, like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The trees around them had already started to turn grayish-white, as if an invisible hand was smearing the surroundings with grayish-white paint. Now, that pair of large hands was sweeping towards them. Quick, 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 quick! Ah! A hysterical scream suddenly rang out. Those whose hearts were already filled with fear felt their hearts jump to their throats, and the chill on their backs became even more intense. Not only did the strong-willed people not stop, they even roared and ran even faster. He didn't dare to look back. He was worried that the little bit of courage and the courage to run for his life would be completely destroyed after he turned back. However, among these people, there were also some who turned their heads to look. After hearing the scream, they turned their heads to look at the place where the scream came from. They could naturally tell who the scream came from. Before this accident happened, that person was still hiding in the grass, squatting comfortably. However, when they turned their heads, they only saw a person whose legs had turned grayish-white on the ground. His hands that were supporting him on the ground were also rapidly undergoing the same change as his leg. The part of his body that was close to the ground was not spared. Moreover, this change was rapidly spreading to his entire body. The person who was lying on the ground, unable to escape, raised his head and looked in the direction that his companions had left. His eyes were filled with pain, fear, and despair. But soon, that pair of eyes became deathly still. Then, they were covered with a layer of grayish-white, until his entire body turned grayish-white like the surroundings. He was like a lifeless human statue. The top half of a grayish-white tree next to him snapped and fell, smashing onto the human statue. Bam! The human statue cracked. A crack that stretched from the left shoulder to the right waist split the human statue into two halves. Only the center of the crack had some red color. It looked like blood, but before the blood dripped, the only red color turned grayish-white. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The people who saw this felt their minds explode. The little bit of air in their chest was suddenly diverted. They even forgot to breathe. Their legs turned to jelly and the totemic power in their bodies became chaotic. In their panic, they neglected the branches in front of them and tripped. Two of them staggered and fell from the tree. If they were on the tree, they still had a chance to escape. However, after falling on the ground, their chances were slim. The fall just now did not feel like they had fallen on grass or mud. It felt more like they had fallen on a rock. If they did not look back, would they not have fallen? They did not care about the pain from the fall, nor did they have time to regret. They could only try their best to escape this place. They even swore in their hearts that they would never come to the Flaming River trading point again. However, they felt their legs getting weaker and weaker. They became heavy and stiff. They could not feel anything, as if they had lost control of their bodies. Thud. Finally, they could no longer run and fell. No, save me. They had also experienced what their comrade had felt before he died. However, this time, no one would slow down. The people who were running at the front had already disappeared. Those who were slow to escape had the same fate as them. Soon, there were no more sounds in the forest. There was only an expanding grayish-white color. At the same time, Zheng Luo, who was guarding the Flaming River trading point, was thinking absent-mindedly. He already knew that Xiao Xian and the rest had noticed the Bat Leader and the King Stoneworm's strange movements. His biggest worry now was not the people who had sneaked into the Flaming River trading point, but the elusive King Beast. They had worked so hard to build a trading zone with a bright future. If a Beast King were to show up, everything would be ruined. Boss, those people you mentioned, some of them went to look for EC. Duo Kong came in and said. When Zheng Luo noticed that people suspected to be from the other side of the sea had snuck into the trading point, he had asked Duo Kong to keep an eye on them. The weaker warriors were not up to this task. The other party's disguise could fool many warriors, but people at Zheng Luo and Duo Kang's level could tell. However, before they knew the other party's motive, they did not want to alert them. After all, there were a lot of problems at hand. After hearing Duo Kang's report, Zheng Luo wiped his face in annoyance. What did they do? I don't think they did anything. They just sat together and talked. They seemed to know we're watching them, but they didn't try to avoid us. Duo Kong did not know why they were here. Ignore them for now. Keep an eye on the surroundings. Boss, do you think that King Stoneworm will come here? Duo Kong was worried too. I don't know. Wait for news. Xiao Xian and the rest have already gone to track it. The forest is so big. It probably won't come here. Oh. Duo Kong scratched his ears and cheek. He could not calm down. The experience of facing a king beast was a nightmare. He would rather die than go through it again. After sitting for a while, Duo Kong left again. Instead of waiting here, he would rather keep an eye on the suspicious people. The person that Duo Kong and Zheng Luo thought was suspicious was sitting in EC's house. He was wearing a hairless sleeveless shirt made of animal hide, coarse linen pants, and a colorful snakeskin belt around his waist. Several bags made of linen and animal hide were hanging from the belt. He wore an ornament made of animal bones around his neck. His exposed arm was painted with some dark green paint. His unkempt and coarse hair was casually tied up with a straw rope. Because his hair was not long after it was tied up, it stood straight up towards the sky. His dressing was quite characteristic of the tribes who often came to the trading point. The man sized up EC's house with a critical gaze. He smacked his lips and concluded, "This place is even better than the one you're living in." Of course. Why else would I come here? EC took out a ceramic cup and poured some water into it. He made this cup himself after coming here. The painting on it was also done by him. It was the same as the utensils he used on the other side of the sea. It was still more convenient to use something familiar. The person didn't hold back either. After drinking the water in the cup, he said, "Another cup. I ran around in the morning. It's so hot. But Yanjiao's trading point is not to be underestimated. The style is to my liking." "Don't tell me you're here to steal Yanjiao's place?" EC asked. "Of course not. I don't care about such a big place. But I do want to cause some trouble for Yanjiao. I want to see how capable they are. You guys sure know how to make fun of yourselves. But Yanjiao people aren't easy to provoke. Once they get angry, it'll be hard to stop, Isi said. The person sitting across from him pursed his lip. He didn't take Isi's words to heart. We're from Chang'e. Why would we be afraid of them getting angry? Getting angry is the fun part. Wu He, since you lent me your long-winged bird, I'll give you a word of advice, Isi said slowly. The person sitting there swung his feet that were covered with tattered straw sandals, looking relaxed and at ease. Don't provoke Yanjiao people. Even if you want to provoke them, now is not the time. Hey kid, I thought you didn't know the Yi family's divination skills? Why does it seem like you know something? Wu He didn't take Isi's words to heart. He was from Chang'e. Perhaps no one here knew about it, but he was quite well known on the other side of the sea. Chang'e wasn't just a tribe. It was a special group of people with different backgrounds. They liked to take risks and were very curious. In their words, most of the things in the world were boring, so they wanted to use their sharp eyes to find some fun. To put it more simply, they were a group of curious adventurers. They were also the first group of people to come from the other side of the sea. As for why they rarely showed themselves, it was because most of them hadn't mastered the language here. If they couldn't even communicate, how could they find any fun? If they wanted to ask for directions, it would be like a chicken talking to a duck. They wouldn't understand. If the tribesmen here were the most disgusted with robbers, then on the other side of the sea, whether it was the tribes or the slave masters, the most disgusted were the Chang'e people. They were a group of lunatics. When they were bored, they would go and provoke others. They built their own happiness on other people's troubles. When the people on the other side of the sea learned that the Chang'e people had crossed the sea and were heading here, they all breathed a sigh of relief. They felt like the flies that had been buzzing around them had finally disappeared. But now, no one knew that the Chang'e people's first target was Yanjiao. However, not all of them had crossed the sea. They were all holed up somewhere to train, learn the language, and gather information. One needed skills to be able to attract the ire of others. Wu He was just one of the people who had mastered the language here. Isi wasn't angry at Wu He's sarcastic words. It's up to you to believe it or not. Since you lent me 2 long-winged birds, I'll say it again. You should leave this place as soon as possible. Something big is going to happen here. Aha, something big? That's even better. You shouldn't leave. As soon as Wu He finished speaking, he suddenly paused and looked in a direction. Isi glanced at the sky outside the window, then looked at Grasshopper, who had been hiding in the corner. It's here. What's here? What do you mean? Wu He looked at Isi, then at Grasshopper. Grasshopper had beast blood, so his control over his totemic power wasn't very precise. Normally, he couldn't completely hide his totemic patterns. But now, the patterns on his body were even clearer, like those on a beast. His thick hair stood up like stone needles. Poochie, short spikes protruded from Ching Fu's back. His sunken eyes were filled with fear. He shrank into a corner. He was so big that he could touch the roof with a single jump. But now, he wanted nothing more than to bury himself in the ground. Why are you so scared? Wu He raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the strange aura. Because he was far away, he didn't feel it very strongly. But even so, it was enough to make his heart jump. It wasn't just them. Zheng Luo and the others in the Flaming River Castle, as well as the sharper people in the trading point, all felt it. What was going on? At the entrance of the trading point, Kuan Tu and the others were guarding the entrance, cautiously watching the people going in and out. Zheng Luo said there were suspicious people moving around the Flaming River trading point these 2 days, but they couldn't find out who they were. This could only mean that the other party was very skilled at disguising themselves. Suddenly, there was a sharp and urgent whistle from the patrol team. This was a warning signal. Someone's coming. Kuan Tu stared in that direction. Soon, they saw 7 people running out of the forest. But these 7 people were very strange. Their bodies were covered in different degrees of gray. At first, they thought it was paint, but when they got closer, they realized it was more like stone. These 7 people looked crazy, as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. They roared hoarsely as they ran. When they saw Kointu and the others, their eyes lit up and they shouted, "Help!" Not long ago, they said they would never enter the Flaming River trading point again. But when they ran for their lives, they split into 2 groups. One group ran to another place, but the 7 of them felt safer with more people. If there were more people, even if they ran, there would be others to share the burden. In this area, the only place with more people was Yanjiao's trading point. That was why they ran all the way here. Of course, Kointu wouldn't let them enter the trading point, so he tied them up with the others. But the people who were tied up were still struggling, shouting at the top of their lungs, "They're coming! They're behind us, behind us!" Kointu didn't know what they were talking about. He wanted to knock them out, but even though they looked crazy, they might know something. So he sent them to Zhengluo. When these people were struggling, the grayish-white stone-like things on their bodies seemed to be growing in their flesh. As they struggled and pulled, those stone-like places separated from their flesh. However, the 7 people did not care about the bleeding wounds on their bodies and continued to madly repeat those words. "Boss, what did they see?" Duo Kang's voice was shaking. Kointu didn't understand, but Duo Kang already had a guess. He just didn't want to believe it. How could this be? How could he be so unlucky? No, it couldn't be what he thought. Duo Kang tried to brainwash himself. But in the next moment, Zhengluo shattered Duo Kang's hope. Zhengluo's voice was hoarse. He gripped his knife so hard his knuckles turned white. "Spread the word, there's a king beast nearby." Thud. Kointu let go and the people who were tied up fell to the ground. King beast. Kointu felt a chill run down his spine. The people who were tied up heard Zhengluo's words and struggled even harder. Their hoarse voices sounded like they were going to bleed. "Let me go. I want to leave. Leave." Why were they stupid enough to come here? They should have run as far as they could. Duo Kang didn't care about those people anymore. With Zhengluo's words in mind, he walked to the top of the Flaming River Tower, took a deep breath, and shouted, "All of you, listen up. There's a king beast nearby. Everyone, be careful." Zhengluo was an advanced totemic warrior. With his full strength, almost everyone in the trading area could hear his words. The bustling trading point froze for a moment, as if digesting this sudden news. But very soon, it was an uproar. The king beast was here. This was like a bomb thrown into the water, creating huge waves in the Flaming River trading point. The king beast was here. What should they do? Run, of course. Stay here and wait for death? Wu He, who was drinking water in EC's room, spat out the water in his mouth, threw the cup away and jumped out the window. "Why are you running? Didn't you want to watch the show? Didn't you want to have fun here?" EC shouted at Wu He's back. "We're here to have fun, not to die. You can stay here if you want." F***CK. No wonder I'm trembling. It's a king beast. Wu He immediately ran out of the trading point. The trading point was in chaos. People were screaming and yelling as they packed their things and left. 4 people who rarely saw living ferocious beasts, beast kings were legendary creatures. But that didn't stop them from fearing beast kings. In the stories passed down by their ancestors, beast kings were invincible. Almost all people who went up against beast kings would die. However, there were also some exceptions among them. Ha ha ha, I've waited for so many years and it's finally here. I'm not leaving, I want to see the king beast. Someone clenched his fists and shouted, his face red with excitement. The people around him looked at him as if he was crazy. "You'll die if you don't run." His companions tried to persuade him again. "So be it. What's there to be afraid of? I want to see what a king beast looks like. I want to stay. Don't stop me." He was hopeless. Seeing how stubborn he was, the people around him gave up. There was no time to waste here. They quickly packed their things and left. Let the idiots who wanted to see the Beast King throw away their lives die there. Chapter 680. Because of Duo Kang's roar, all the traveling teams that were trading in the Flaming River trading point, as well as the tribesmen who had set up their stalls along the river, all packed up and left. They closed their windows and doors, took all their goods out, and rushed towards the 3 main doors. Some people did not have a clear idea of what a king beast was, but when they saw the others running for their lives, they were moved by the atmosphere. According to the others, it was not good to stay, so they should just run for their lives. Yanjiao's patrols and gatekeepers were summoned to the open space inside the Flaming River Castle. Zhengluo would tell them what to do next. Even with Zhengluo and Duokong here, the word King Beast was the biggest source of fear. "Boss, what do we do now?" Duokong asked Zhengluo anxiously. Zhengluo couldn't make up his mind. Who knew they would encounter something like this? Let's see if there's any news from the tribe. Zhengluo had already sent someone back to the headquarters to inform them of what happened here. They would definitely send someone over immediately. No matter what, there's no use panicking now. Guard the trading point well and don't let anyone take advantage of us. Duokong could only order his men to clear the trading point. Most of the outsiders would definitely leave, but only a few would stay. They had to keep an eye on those who stayed behind. Plus, they definitely wouldn't let those people run around at a time like this. They had to restrict their movements and send people to keep an eye on them. Soon, Gigu brought his men over. When he heard the news, he wanted to slam the table. The thing he was most worried about had happened. Where's Xiao Xian and the others? Duokong had been waiting for them. When they encountered the salt beast in the salt mines, it was Xiao Xian who blocked it for them. Now, the person he trusted the most was not Gigu, the current chief, or Xiao Xian, the former chief, but Xiao Xian, the Grand Elder. The others who had the same experience as Duokong also looked at Gigu, wanting to hear from him about Xiao Xian. They haven't returned yet. Gigu had never faced a king stoneworm before, so he couldn't make the decision on his own. This time, it was the king stoneworm. In the entire Yanjiao tribe, Xian was the only one who had come into close contact with the king stoneworm. What should we do now? They were still in the forest and had not returned. If the king stoneworm came directly to the trading point, should we fight it? Or should I avoid it? Duokong was anxious. It was not hard to imagine the consequences of fighting the Beast King head-on. He might be able to stop the Beast King, but he would have to pay a heavy price. On the other hand, if he chose to run away, he would have to give up on the trading zone. Since the establishment of the Flaming River trading point, they had put in a lot of effort. No one could bear to give it up just like that. Prepare for both scenarios, Gigu said. If there's no other choice, we can only endure it. If we can't, we can only give up. It was impossible for more people to lose their lives because of this trading area. Let's hope that the king stoneworm is only there and will leave soon. I hope it doesn't come towards us, Guangyi sighed. At this moment, someone said, if there's a fire seed. He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood what he meant. If the ancient fire seed was still there, it would definitely be a deterrent to fearsome beasts. Even if it was a king beast, it should still be effective. After all, Yanjiao's fire seed was stronger than the average small to medium-sized tribe. However, the ancient fire seed was about to disappear. There was always a price to pay. It was impossible for everything to be perfect. When it came to the fire seed, they could only choose one. They chose to merge. But didn't the Grand Elder say that as long as there are people, there will be a fire seed? There are many of us. When we gather together, we can release the fire seed's aura. Maybe it'll be useful? Koan Tu said from nearby. Makes sense. Zhengluo looked in the direction where the king beast had appeared. The aura did not come closer, but it did not leave either. Its presence was only getting stronger. Even the dullest people could feel the oppressive aura that made their legs tremble. Whoosh, Gigu whistled. He gestured towards the sky. Keep an eye on that direction. A snow-white shadow flew across the sky. It was Gigu's snow-white falcon. Cha-Cha was not here, so they had to let it go. After all, the sky was much safer than the ground. They could also observe the king stoneworm's movements clearly. While Gigu and Zheng Luo were discussing, the people who had rushed out of the trading point were all running away from the king beast. Of course, there were also people who wanted to take the opportunity to rob. After all, everyone had brought a lot of things with them. Some greedy people would inevitably have evil thoughts when they saw this. I can't believe they're still thinking of robbing at a time like this. In the sky, Wu He sat on a long-winged bird, looking down at the panicking crowd. However, those who could come here were not kind people. They might not lose to the fearsome beasts in the forest when they were angry. They did not hold back against robbers. You want to rob me? Fine, I'll at least leave an arm behind. Wu He patted his long-winged bird, gesturing for it to fly towards the king beast. Although he did not have the guts to stay in the trading point, he wanted to see what the king beast looked like from afar. Coo, the long-winged bird chirped unwillingly. It did not want to fly there. All beasts would not want to go there. Why would they go there? Did they want to die? I won't go near it. I'll just take a look from afar. You want to see what the king beast looks like too, right? On the other side of the sea, Wu He had gone deep into the forest with the Changle people when he was young. He had once felt the king beast's aura up close. Although he did not see what the king beast looked like, that soul-stirring feeling was still engraved in his mind. He remembered that the Changle old man who had brought him around had warned him to run as far as he could if he encountered a king beast in the future. Of course, suicidal people were a different story. Apart from that, those who did not want to commit suicide but still went to the king beast were true warriors. Don't think that was a compliment. To the Changle people, true warriors meant the same thing as brainless idiot. Now Wu He had just arrived and he had encountered another one. He could not help but sigh at his luck. Moreover, he did not want to commit suicide and he did not want to be a true warrior. That was why he did not stay in the trading point like EC. Instead, he summoned his long-winged bird and flew away. However, Wu He was like the other Changle people. He had an incomparably curious heart and was afraid of death. That was why he would not go near the source of danger. Instead, he would sneak a peek from afar to satisfy his curiosity so that he could show off when he met the other Changle people in the future. A Yanjiao even tamed a bird. Wu He watched as the white figure flew out of the flaming river castle like lightning towards the king beast. Wu He retracted his gaze and slapped the long-winged bird's neck. Did you see that? It's not even afraid of that size. What are you afraid of? Coo, the long-winged bird let out an aggrieved cry. Others might not understand, but Wu He knew what it meant. The long-winged bird was saying that although the bird that flew out of the flaming river castle was small, it was fast and could escape much faster than them. Although the long-winged bird was unwilling, it could only listen to its master's orders. It flapped its wings and flew towards the king beast. After flying through a forest, they could see a path opened up in the forest. Compared to the other direction, there was not a single person here. Even flying beasts were nowhere to be seen. The king beast's deterrence was still quite strong. Wherever the king beast was, all other beasts would retreat. What kind of king beast is it? Wu He looked down curiously until he saw a gray-white forest. Yes, a gray-white forest. The long-winged bird was already trembling. Even if it was in the air, and would not come into close contact with the king beast's aura made it feel suppressed even in the air. After flying in that direction for a while, it did not go any closer. Instead, it flew around the forest. The forest in front of it was all gray-white. There were no other colors. That's turned into stone. Wu He was shocked. Such a large forest had actually turned into stone. As the long-winged bird flew around the forest, Wu He saw the king beast that caused all this commotion. The king beast looked like a giant wriggling worm. Its color was not gray-white like the forest, but more like the color of melted rock. Wu He had been to a volcano before. The volcano's mouth had melted rocks all year round, but they were not crimson red like during an eruption. The only difference was that the color was different from normal rock. Now, this king beast's color was the same as the gray melted rocks he saw at the volcano's mouth. However, unlike the crater of a volcano, there wasn't any heat here. The temperature was still high, but when they approached the petrified forest, they felt a chill rolling around their bodies. The hair on the back of their necks was about to stand up from the wind. Wu He did not go any closer. He just watched from afar. The king beast wriggled on the ground, making a rumbling sound. Everything in the forest, be it trees or rocks, was crushed into a smooth stone path. There were some bumps on the stone path left behind by the king stoneworms wriggling. It was as if nothing here was an obstacle. As long as it wanted to go, it could go anywhere it wanted. If a king beast like this ran towards the flaming river trading point, could the Yanjiao really stop it? Would the trading point that they had worked so hard to build be destroyed? But Wu He thought about it again. He was just here to have fun. Who cared how the Yanjiao fought? He just needed to watch from the side. Now that he thought about it, he was looking forward to the battle between the flaming horns and the Beast King. However, the king beast did not seem to want to go to the flaming river trading point immediately. Instead, it wriggled around in circles. Occasionally, it would raise its upper body and spit out a cloud of dust. Wu He looked at the ground again. It had flattened a large part of the forest. As the king beast wriggled around, the petrified forest continued to expand. Wu He could see the greenery turning into stone at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing the king beast turn the forest into stone, Wu He couldn't help but shiver. The rhythm of the long-winged bird's wings also became chaotic. What is it doing? Wu He could not understand the king beast's actions. The long-winged bird chirped anxiously again. It was not loud, as if it was afraid others would hear it. It wanted to leave this uncomfortable place as soon as possible. Wait, let me take a look. Wu He was really curious now. The king beast must have a purpose for appearing here, right? Was it looking for food? Or something else? Wu He scanned the gray-white petrified area. In the flattened forest, there was a small hill protruding from the ground. There was a large hole in the middle of the hill. The king beast must have come out from there. It came from underground. No wonder it appeared so suddenly. Just as Wu He was talking to himself, he suddenly saw 3 people running out of the pitch-black hole at the top of the short mountain. Yes, they were definitely humans. Even if he was a little far away, with Wu He's eyesight, even if he couldn't see the other party's appearance clearly, he was still certain that the 3 people who jumped out of the hole were indeed people. Who was so brave to come out of the king beast's hole? Thinking about how he didn't even want to get close to them, Wu He concluded, they're really fierce warriors. Even though the king beast was quite a distance away from the hill, it was the first time Wu He had seen someone brave enough to come so close. The 3 people who jumped out of the hole ran away like the wind. They did not even look at the king beetle. The person in the lead paused for a moment. At the same time, the wriggling king beetle stood up and looked in the direction of the 3 people. But that was all there was to it. After that, the beast king went back to the ground and wriggled around the area. The rumbling noise was deafening in the forest. As for the 3 of them, it was inevitable that there would be some changes in their appearance when they were escaping. The reason why Wu He couldn't see their appearances clearly was because most of their bodies were covered in a layer of grayish-white stone powder. Were these changes caused by the king beast? They're really brave, Wu He said again. If they ran a little slower and the king beast was a little closer to the hole, the three people might not have been able to escape so easily. The petrification of their bodies would have severely restricted their movements. Follow them. Wu-He patted the long-winged bird and said. Caw, the long-winged bird chirped happily. It could finally leave this place. Wu-He looked at the three people who jumped out of the hole and ran out of the petrified forest. After running for some distance, they turned around and ran in another direction. That was the direction of the Flaming River trading point. While following the trio, the leader looked up at the sky. Wu-He knew that he had been discovered, but he didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he smiled. He didn't know if the other party could see him. In any case, it was useless even if they knew that he was following them. Who asked him to be in the sky? This feeling of looking down on the ground from above, this feeling of greeting their ancestors, this feeling of not being able to touch a single hair on his body, this was King awesome. Wu-He ordered the long-winged bird to fly lower. He wanted to greet the three people who had just escaped from the king beast. But before he could say anything, the person in the lead put a finger in his mouth and whistled. Wu-He raised an eyebrow. What was the meaning of this? Calling for reinforcements? I'm not afraid. Before he could finish his sentence, the long-winged bird screeched and turned to leave. Its sudden reaction almost threw Wu-He off. Hey, what's wrong with you? You're not listening. Wrong direction. Wu-He wanted the long-winged bird to continue following the three people, but he sensed something and turned to look at the sky. An eagle that was twice the size of the long-winged bird was flying towards them from a higher altitude. Run, run, Wu-He urged. Thinking back to the news he heard, Wu-He looked at the eagle that was chasing them. Was that the Yanjiao's giant mountain eagle? Did that mean the three people below were from the Flaming Horn tribe? Chapter 681. When Xiao Xian and the other two returned to the Flaming River trading point, it was already empty. Those who wanted to escape had already left. Those who didn't want to leave had been brought to a corner by the Yanjiao people. The patrols who were counting the people in the trading point almost attacked Xiao Xian and the other two as thieves. Grand Elder and the others are back. Kuan Tu shouted excitedly as he ran towards the Flaming River castle. Duo Kong heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that Xiao Xian was back. No matter what happened next, with Xiao Xian around, he would feel more at ease. However, when they saw the state of Xiao Xian and the other two, Duo Kong and Zheng Luo were shocked. How did you end up like this? Zheng Luo asked hurriedly. Don't mention it, it's all because of that king stoneworm. Tower slumped in his chair, exhausted. He took a few gulps of water from the person beside him. This was the first time he was so close to a king beast. As expected, the fearsome beasts he hunted in the grassland, even the most troublesome ones, paled in comparison to a king beast. They were on a completely different level. The three of them were covered in grayish-white powder. Not only that, some parts of their bodies and clothes were grayish-white too. However, those parts had already turned to stone. Seeing Tower shake off a layer of hard stone on his arm, Duo Kong and the others' hearts skipped a beat. There was already a piece of flesh on Ta Shou's forearm that had turned into stone. Fortunately, the area that was petrified was not too deep, and the injury was not too serious. However, when they saw that piece of flesh that was dripping with blood after shaking off the stone fragments, everyone present felt uneasy. If even the team leader couldn't avoid this kind of injury, how long could they last? Among Xiao Xian and the other two, Tower's injury was the most serious. While Tower was applying medicine, Ao also told everyone about the process of their chase and the conclusions and guesses they had made. Not long after they crossed the Flaming River, they sensed the King Stoneworm's location. The underground tunnel led directly to the surface. However, there was a King Stoneworm outside the cave. Ta and Ao did not know what to do. Should they retreat or charge out? At that time, Ta and Ao were more inclined to rush out directly, but they were stopped by Xiao Xian. Fortunately, Xian stopped us at that time. Otherwise, if we had rushed out at that time, we might not have been able to return safely. Ao sighed. Because they were not familiar with the king stoneworm, they did not have a clear understanding of the king beast. Even though they knew that the king beast was strong, Ao and Ta had thought that they could escape if they tried. They were confident in their speed. Besides, the king stoneworm was not near the entrance of the cave. At least they could follow its movements. As long as the king beast did not notice them, they could leave. It was only when Xiao Xian stopped them and found another opportunity to escape that they realized how naive they were. Even if the king stoneworm did not pay attention to them, it could still turn them into stone. So that means we can't even get close to the king stoneworm? Zhengluo frowned. If they couldn't even get close, how could they fight? Were they going to be turned into stone like the forest? Don't move first. I'll rest for a while before we go take a look, Xiao Xian said. Since Xiao Xian had spoken, the others did not object. Gigu even told Xiao Xian about the original plan. Xian, you said that as long as we are there, the fire seed will be there. There are quite a few Yanjiao people in the trading point now. If we all work together, the fire seed's aura will be quite strong. Do you think it will be enough to deter the king stoneworm? Gigu asked. Please don't. Xiao Xian did not even bother to drink his water. What? Gigu did not understand what Xiao Xian meant. The others looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. Gigu was right. Wasn't the fire seed just a deterrent to fearsome beasts? Xiao Xian thought for a moment. There's something like a fire seed on the king stoneworm's body. How is that possible? Everyone gasped. They always thought that fearsome beasts were afraid of fire seeds. King beasts were still beasts. How could they have fire seeds? Even if they did, why didn't they sense it? It does have it, but it's different from the tribesman's fire seed. It's more like a fire seed unique to beasts. I felt it on the bat leader too. The difference was that the fire seed on the bat leader was not as strong as the one on the king stoneworm, Xiao Xian said. When he saw the bat leader in the 1,000-grain gold field, he already felt something strange. Now that he saw the king beast, he finally understood what it was. It was a fire seed unique to beasts. Unlike the tribesmen, the fire seed on the beasts' bodies was unique to them. It did not look like a primitive fire seed either. Instead, it was fused into their blood. Moreover, based on the analysis of the fire seed on the bat leader and the king stoneworm, if Xiao Xian guessed correctly, the fire seed on the king stoneworm's body was formed by the two beasts themselves. Was the king beast's ability to condense fire seeds? Why were king beasts superior to other fearsome beasts? If fire seeds could exist on humans, why couldn't they exist on other beasts? In the past, Xiao Xian had been close to the bat leader and the king stoneworm. He had even fought the Salt King before. But at that time, he did not sense anything different from the three beasts. After bringing Zhengluo and the others across the sea and fusing with Yanjiao's fire seed, his strength increased by a lot. Especially the light shield around his totemic flames. It was another special power that existed in Xiao Xian's body. He was getting better at using it. Xiao Xian also knew that the reason why he was not strongly rejected by other tribes' fire seeds and could sense things that others could not was because of the special power within him. He didn't know what that power was, but what he sensed was real. There was indeed a fire seed in the king stoneworm's body. It was a fire seed that belonged to beasts. Fire seeds could disperse and gather. Only fearsome beasts that could condense fire seeds could become kings. The fire seed in the bat leader's body was not obvious. It was just a trend. At most, it could only be considered a half-king. It was above fearsome beasts and below king beasts. If it could condense the fire seed in its body one day, it would become a true king. Ao and the others did not know why Xiao Xian said this, but Xiao Xian did not look like he was joking. In this aspect, they also believed that Xiao Xian would not speak without any evidence. If there really is a fire seed in the king stoneworm's body, won't we anger it if we release our fire seed energy? Duo Kong asked. Fire seeds usually repelled each other, so it was definitely not a good idea to anger the king beetle because of this. But if the king stoneworm comes towards us, we can only fight it, Duo Kong was worried. It was not a question of whether they should avoid it or not. They had no choice. I'll go take a look first. Xiao Xian had recovered. He did not shake off the layer of stone powder on his body. Instead, he left the trading point and headed towards the king stoneworm. Zhengluo and Gigu followed closely behind Xiao Xian. One reason was to help Xiao Xian if necessary. The other reason was to see what the king stoneworm looked like. Xiao Xian approached the king stoneworm. He did not tell them everything in the trading point. When he sensed the strange fire seed energy in the king stoneworm, he also sensed the king stoneworm's mentality. Just like the totemic flame in Xiao Xian's mind, it would change according to the warrior's mentality and emotions. The king stoneworm did not have a totemic flame, but it had a similar fire seed energy. As the energy fluctuated, the king stoneworm expressed its thoughts and emotions. If it were anyone else, even if they sensed the fire seed energy in the king stoneworm, they might not be able to escape unscathed because the fire seed would reject them. However, Xiao Xian's other energy was different. When Xiao Xian left the cave with Ta and Ao, he paused for a moment because he sensed this change. At the same time, he was not repelled by it. In order to leave quietly, the three of them did their best to conceal their totemic power and Yanjiao's fire seed energy. Although it would slow them down, it was safer. When the king stoneworm stood up, it might not have sensed their energy. Perhaps it was Xiao Xian's other power. This was because Xiao Xian did not feel any rejection from the king stoneworm. On the contrary, the king stoneworm seemed to be excited for a moment. However, after Xiao Xian completely blocked out the power and left, the king stoneworm did not notice it anymore. To verify his guess, Xiao Xian told Zhengluo and Gigu to stay away while he approached the king stoneworm. He did not stand in the direction of the Flaming River trading point. Instead, he hid somewhere else. This way, if the king stoneworm made a move and he escaped, the king stoneworm would not chase him in the direction of the trading point. Xiao Xian stood behind a tree that was still green. He looked towards the source of the rumbling sound. There, the king stoneworm was still wriggling aimlessly. Compared to when Xiao Xian and the rest left, the grayish-white stone forest had expanded. When the king stoneworm had its back to him, Xiao Xian suppressed the totemic power in his body and tried not to release the flaming horn's fire seed energy. At the same time, he tried to activate another type of energy in his body. Xiao Xian discovered this when he was practicing controlling the ancestral bone ornament. The two powers in his body did not repel each other. It could even be said that this special power was assisting the Yanjiao's totemic power. Back then, he was able to achieve a different awakening than others. He was able to successfully carve and awaken the ancestral bone ornament. He was able to absorb fire crystals before fusing with the fire seed. These were all because of this special power. Being able to master this power was a great improvement for himself. Putting away his other emotions, Xiao Xian slowly activated the other power. In his sea of consciousness, the totemic flames did not change much. However, the light shield outside started to brighten. Every time it flashed, it would become brighter by a bit. Gigu and Zhengluo did not understand what Xiao Xian was doing. They could only see Xiao Xian standing behind a tree. He did not move and his eyes were closed. They did not know what he was thinking. Why did he close his eyes instead of looking at the king stoneworm? But soon, they realized that the rumbling in their ears had stopped abruptly. They looked over. In the stone forest, the wriggling king stoneworm's upper body was slightly raised. Its massive body did not have feet, only rings of wrinkles on its body. It did not seem to have any hard armor, nor did it have any intimidating spikes. It did not even seem to have any offensive power. However, such a massive beast was able to make countless people and beasts tremble in fear. They did not even have the courage to fight back. When it turned to look over, Gigu and Jingluo did not even see where its eyes were. They did not know how it saw. It only raised its upper body slightly. Its head was already taller than the tallest tree in the forest. In the distant sky, the long-winged bird that had finally escaped Cha-Cha's pursuit stopped. Wu He looked over at the king stoneworm. Even though he could not see it clearly, he could still see the silhouette beyond the forest. What's going on? Wu He did not understand. Why did the king stoneworm suddenly stop? It even looked around. His heart was itching again. Wu He looked around and did not see the eagle again. He patted the long-winged bird. Let's go. Coo! The long-winged bird cooed softly, obviously unwilling. They had just escaped and now they had to go back? The eagle was still around. It would be killed. Let's go. Be careful. Something must have happened. Wu He's instincts told him that something was wrong. Could it be that the king beast was finally heading towards Yanjiao? Thinking about it this way, Wu He was even more unwilling to miss this good show. No matter how unwilling the long-winged bird was, it would not disobey its master's orders. It could only slowly and carefully fly over. In the stone forest, the king stoneworm turned its round head and scanned its surroundings. Finally, it confirmed Xiao Xian's location. Rumble, the sound of its enormous body crashing into the stone forest rang out again. This time, it was more urgent than before. The king stoneworm moved even faster. Gigu and Jingluo, who were hiding in the dark, saw the king stoneworm moving towards Xiao Xian. They were anxious and even whistled a few times to warn him. Xiao Xian did not open his eyes but raised a hand to signal to Gigu and Jingluo. He knew that the king stoneworm was coming his way. The grayish-white was expanding towards Xiao Xian. When the grayish-white approached, Xiao Xian moved too. He did not run towards the flaming river trading point. Instead, he ran in the opposite direction. That way, even if something happened, it would not affect the trading point. As Xiao Xian left, the king stoneworm followed. It sped up again. Although it was huge and surrounded by trees and rocks, nothing could stop it. Xiao Xian had to avoid obstacles when he ran, but the king stoneworm ran in a straight line. Rocks blocked rocks and crushed trees. What is he trying to do? Wu He was confused when he saw what was happening below. He could recognize that the person running in front of the king stoneworm was the one who summoned the giant mountain eagle. He was a Yanjiao tribesman. What he did not understand was that the Yanjiao tribesman had clearly left. Why did he come back? And why was the king stoneworm following him? Was he trying to lure the king stoneworm away? Chapter 682. It was naturally a good idea to draw the trouble away instead of confronting it head-on. However, the prerequisite was that the trouble had to be really far away from here. Using one person as bait to lure the king beast away, while the rest stayed put. Could it be that Yanjiao wanted to sacrifice one person to protect the rest? Wu He guessed as he watched the situation below. At the same time, Xiao Xian, who was circling the forest, had no time to pay attention to anything else. He was only focused on the king stoneworm behind him. He circled the forest, and the king stoneworm followed him. However, it was only heading in Xiao Xian's direction. Even if there was a mountain in front of it, it would not go around it. It would go straight through it. Wherever the king stoneworm walked, it left behind a stone path with obvious wrinkles on the ground. The trees around the stone path all turned gray, and the caves it passed through left behind a straight tunnel. Just like how the king stoneworm could move freely in its nest, here, the mountain rocks were as easy as a wild beast stepping on the grass. Moreover, when it passed through the entire mountain, the sound it made when it moved through the mountain was much quieter than when it moved on the ground. Xiao Xian had been paying attention to the fire seed energy emitted by the king stoneworm, as well as the fire seed energy waves on its body. This allowed him to guess the king stoneworm's emotions. He realized that the king stoneworm's emotions were not very strong. It could even be said that it was monotonous. Other than happiness and excitement, he could not sense anything else. Xiao Xian did not know if it was because his ability was limited, or because the king stoneworm's emotions were not rich to begin with. He believed the latter. If the king stoneworm's emotions were not rich, it would not be a good thing. In that case, Xiao Xian would not be able to sense clearly what it wanted to do, and what its goal was. Xiao Xian could only try and guess. Fortunately, at least until now, the king stoneworm had not shown any hostility to Xiao Xian. In fact, there was even a hint of friendliness in its happiness. This did not mean that the king stoneworm would not attack Xiao Xian, but it might treat Xiao Xian as one of its own, just like how the bat leader treated Xiao Xian as one of its own. The difference was that the bat leader didn't attack Xiao Xian, but the king stoneworm didn't know how to control its power. If the distance between Xiao Xian and the king stoneworm got closer, Xiao Xian's fate would be obvious. He would be turned into a stone forest. Zhengluo and Gigu saw this and guessed that Xiao Xian wanted to lure the king stoneworm away. But how far did he have to lure it away? How was Xiao Xian going to get rid of the king stoneworm? There's still Cha-Cha. Gigu looked up at the sky. Seeing that Cha-Cha was following them, he felt relieved. That's good, that's good. Zhengluo was relieved. As long as the king stoneworm was lured away, Cha-Cha could bring Xiao Xian back. The king stoneworm couldn't fly anyway, so what if it was powerful? After thinking it through, he first took out a strip of cloth and wrote a few simple words on the cloth with a bamboo tube of paint that he carried with him. Then, he called the snow-white falcon over and had it bring the cloth to the trading point. A white figure flew out from the forest with a piece of cloth tied to its leg. It flew straight towards the trading point without looking at the long-winged bird in the sky. Duo Kong and the others were waiting anxiously at the trading point. They didn't see Xiao Xian and the rest for a long time, nor did they see any signs of the king beast. They could only walk around in circles, not in the mood to sit down and wait. Finally, seeing the white falcon flying over, Ao, who was lying down and resting, got up and untied the cloth tied to the falcon's leg. What did it say? Duo Kong and Ta hurried over. Gigu wrote it. He said that Xian has lured the king beast away, Ao said. Lured away? Duo Kong was confused. Was a king beast that easy to lure away? If it was that easy, why were they so afraid of the king beast? Back at the salt flats, the salt beast acted based on its own preferences and emotions. It didn't care about anything else. The king stoneworm shouldn't have been that easy to lure away either. But since it was Xiao Xian who did it, it was possible. It's a good thing if it's lured away, Ta said. He didn't want to fight the king stoneworm because he knew what it was capable of. Without absolute power, fighting a king beast would be a waste of their tribe's manpower. The result might not even be satisfactory. Soon, the news that Yanjiao's Grand Elder had lured the king beast away spread throughout the trading point. Of course, there weren't many people in the trading point. They were all gathered in a few places, so it was reasonable that the news spread quickly. They lured the king beast away? The Yanjiao people were jubilant. On the other hand, the people who stayed were disappointed. They were prepared to die. They were just talking nonsense with the Yanjiao people, saying that if the king beast returned, they would help. But now they couldn't see it? What was the point of staying? Their lives were bleak. No, I have to leave. Someone suddenly rushed out of the crowd. The patrol team, who had relaxed after hearing the good news, didn't pay attention and let the person rush out. Even though the 3 main gates of the trading point were closed, the outer walls of the trading point couldn't stop people who were good at climbing and jumping. The patrol team couldn't leave just because of one person. They couldn't just leave like that. Even though the news from the Flaming River Castle said that the Grand Elder had lured the King Beast away, they didn't have any other orders, so they couldn't just leave like that. Other than that person, a few more people left. The rest wanted to leave too. They wanted to see the King Beast, but they were beaten up. At a time like this, the Flaming Horns did not want to cause more trouble because of these few people. Duo Kong also frowned when he heard the news. He was also worried that the people who ran out would interfere with Xiao Xian's plan. So, he led a team to chase after them. If they interfered with Xiao Xian's plan to lure the King Beast away, they would be killed immediately. Master, did the King Beast really leave? Grasshopper looked anxiously in one direction and asked carefully. If he really lured the King Beast far away, wouldn't you feel it? Not yet. EC looked at the spikes on Grasshopper's back that ran along her spine. When Grasshopper was scared, the spikes on his back would stick out. Although he had retracted them a little, the spikes on his spine were still standing straight. Qing Fu's brain wasn't very bright, but the beast blood flowing in his body made him more sensitive to danger. Even if his brain didn't realize it, the instinct of a beast that was deeply embedded in his bones existed like a conditioned reflex. Grasshopper touched the spikes on his back and responded slowly, "Oh." Others might only be afraid of the King Beast, but he was terrified of its aura. He almost peed his pants. On the other side, Xiao Xian did plan to lure the King Stoneworm away. The fact that the King Stoneworm was following behind him confirmed some of his guesses. But where was he going to lure the King Stoneworm now? Leading it upstream? Or should it be directed downstream? Or central? If he lured it to central, he would probably make Yanjiao hate him. After all, many people knew about this and it wasn't wise to hide it. Logically speaking, it was best to lure it to a place with fewer people. There weren't as many tribes upstream as there were downstream. The Rain tribe was just a little upstream from Yanjiao. If he lured it upstream, he would have to avoid the Rain tribe and the other tribes that Xiao Xian knew lived upstream. If it was just the Rain tribe and the other tribes, it would be easy. As he was thinking, Xiao Xian saw a river in front of him. This river was a branch of the Flaming River. It wasn't very big. During the driest times, he could see two large green rocks on the riverbed. But now, there was still a lot of water and the rocks were nowhere to be seen. Xiao Xian wanted to walk along the river, but after thinking about it, he gave up. Instead, he kicked down a tree that was as thick as 3 people and threw the trunk into the river. He gathered strength in his legs and his body shot out. When he landed on the surface of the water, he stepped on the tree trunk again and jumped to the other side of the river. This river wasn't very wide in this area. The riverbed was only about 10 meters wide. With Xiao Xian's ability and the help of the tree trunk, he could easily cross it. But the King Stoneworm behind him couldn't do the same. Xiao Xian knew that it could easily crush rocks and trees, but what about the river? Should he cross it directly or burrow under the riverbed? After running for a while, Xiao Xian turned around and looked behind him. The King Stoneworm had followed him to the riverside and stopped. It looked at the water, then raised its head slightly to look at Xiao Xian. It was probably thinking about how to cross the river. Xiao Xian didn't sense any big changes in the King Stoneworm's emotions. Perhaps this little problem was nothing to it. Just as Xiao Xian was guessing how it was going to cross the river, the King Stoneworm moved. It didn't burrow into the ground but continued to walk towards Xiao Xian, as if the river didn't exist. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of water freezing could be heard. Xiao Xian saw that as the King Stoneworm approached, the water in the river froze as if it was frozen, spreading outwards from where it was closest to the King Stoneworm. What was different from the frozen river was that the water in that area was the same as the forest, turning into a grayish-white color. The water had turned into stone. Without changing its wriggling posture, the King Stoneworm continued to walk, as if it was walking on flat ground. However, under the King Stoneworm's body, as it moved forward, a stone path was laid out on the surface of the water. It was like a moving train with a track laid out in front of it. It only needed to keep moving forward. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Xian looked at the King Stoneworm that was about to cross the river. He turned around and continued running. This time, he made a U-turn and returned to the riverside. Then, using the same method, he jumped over the river with the help of the tree trunk. The King Stoneworm behind him also used the same method to cross the river, forming a stone path on the river surface. An idea suddenly popped into Xiao Xian's head. Thus, the group of people who were chasing after the king stared at Xiao Xian, who was originally running away from the flaming river, returning with the king beast. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.